And then we said, you know what, we're really going to create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's going to become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine. Let's do this again. What up, folks? It's gonna be a good night tonight. I'm freaking excited. We got our boy Mnmlty. Shit, I said it right. I'm so proud of myself here. Man, it's been a long time. It's crazy to think that I heard of your name in the first NFT project I ever bought, and now it's coming for full circle, and you're on my NFT show. Who would have thought?
It is kind of crazy, huh?
Wild.
But before that, Matty, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing amazing, man. It's a fantastic day. I'm excited. You know, it's stream day. That's always a good thing.
Beautiful day.
Yeah, I mean, what's there to not to there's nothing to complain about. Everything's good. Dude, it was Taco Thursday today, so you know I'm in a good mood.
You love
Taco
your tacos.
Thursday.
Huh?
Yeah.
Taco
Yeah,
Thursday?
breaking rules, man. Exactly. That's what they're meant for. So
That's how they
yeah,
do it in Maryland.
exactly. Living on the edge.
That's
living on the
OG
edge.
Maryland
So
shit right there.
yeah, they do everything
Taco
else wrong. They do
Thursday.
everything else wrong, so they might as well do Taco Thursday.
I'm
So
assuming on Taco Thursday it's like lobster roll Taco Thursday or some shit like that.
that's up in Maine. That's a little more. I'm not that close to
That's fair.
DC.
That's fair. That's
Exactly.
fair.
If I was maybe in Potomac, then maybe, but no. Just
That's definitely
keeping
a
keeping it old school.
Potomac vibe where all
Right?
the rich people live.
All right.
Yeah, exactly. All those people would think I'm pedestrian.
But you're doing good, buddy.
What about you? Yeah, man, I'm doing good. Doing good. How about yourself?
Dude, ready to rock and roll, kicking ass. Dude, midlife is starting to monetize here, and we're starting to get some exposure, and it's like, finally, we've been doing this shit for multiple years. And you know what that is? That's just part of the grind, man. Just part of the grind. We all know that, and consistency over a long period of time and discipline. That's what we talk about a lot, multiple people. And that's what we're going to continue to do. And we've built a cool little group of people that comes. And what's mind-blowing to me is they come and watch 2 to 3 hour shows twice a week. That is a different type of being that can do that. So
Yeah.
I appreciate it. But I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to rock. I'm pumped. And with that, I think we're ready to introduce our highly esteemed guest. And so what we've done differently that anybody's here that is new, most of our OGs are probably just here at this point. We're going to go through Mnmlty's resume before we get to the introductions and the world famous midlife crisis question. So first, resume. This dude has an amazing resume. We're going to start off with dude was the director of international sales for The Leverage, which was a serious streetwear brand. From there, then owns his own company, trading fashion wholesale company, so staying in the clothing business. And then he finds Web3. Starts off as co-founder of Ethereals, works for Augmented Labs that actually helped Kaiju Kings in the beginning. We'll get to that. And then recently co-founder of Kooks by Terry. And not only was a co-founder, he was a launch strategist as well. Welcome to the show, buddy. How you doing?
What's up? What's up? What's up, guys? I'm really excited to be here, and I think it's really cool how this whole thing has come full circle, and I'm sure nobody listening or who will listen to this will know sort of the extent of how we met and how it just clicked this last month. But
Right.
I'm excited to chat, man. Have a conversation.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is the reason why we started talking again is I like I don't know one of the things that I do before I go to bed is just I'll make sure to interact with like let's say 20 to 30 tweets. And Von Doom was talking about how he has some spots in the alpha chat, and I think I just like ridiculously said, "What's an alpha chat?" And then next thing I know, I got an invite. And Mnmlty like reached out to me. He's like, "Holy shit, it's Mikey G," and I'm like, "Yeah, bro, I'm here, baby." And then now we're on the show. So,
Dude, Mikey, what is the interesting fact? You drop ball.
oh shit! And we
Mhm.
got to fight. This is my fault. And then the interesting fact is this man has been sober for over 12 years. And how did you describe it again, Mnmlty?
Real deal Holyfield
It's
sober,
the
not that
real
California
deal.
sober.
Yeah, not just alcohol, the real
No,
deal Holyfield.
not California sober.
Yeah, not California
Real
sober.
deal Holyfield
And I can
sober.
say that because I'm from California. No offense to all my California natives, respect, but I had to throw that out there.
Yeah, respect. You're just not really sober. Wink, wink. It's good. It's good.
Oh, I love it, man. So, welcome to the show, man. I'm so excited to get into this conversation. And like I explained, man, miraculous thing we do here, we have a 2 to 3 hour conversation based off one question. And that one question is, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3. Kind of what we've seen patterns over time. Episode 1 is really about your childhood upbringing. Episode 2 is about your professional career until you found Web3. And then episode 3 is really kind of Web3 and beyond. So hit us, brother. Maddie and I will guide you along this magical journey.
Sounds good. Oh man, going back to my childhood seems like so long ago. I grew up in Costa Mesa, California, to divorced parents. I think they had gotten separated when I was like 2 years old. They were both pretty punk rock people, growing up in Orange County at the age of, they were 19 and 21 when they had me.
Wow.
They ran around with, they were both sober at the time, and they were running around with like that whole just crew of Orange County punk rock people, and some of them were in the Cadillac Tramps and Social Distortion. They made good friends with Johnny Two Bags, who's my godfather and the lead guitarist of Social Distortion.
Wow. That's pretty
That's
cool.
cool.
So they naturally just had this sort of like, I don't know, they're just punk rock parents, young people who are raising kids, and I'm super grateful to have them as parents, and they're super sweet people. But young parents and what comes along with that. I ended up I played a lot of sports growing up, and I played everything from baseball to volleyball, basketball. I ended up playing golf in high school. Like any sport under the sun, you name it. I was a pretty athletic kid, but what really took my heart and my soul, and what I call sort of my first love in life, was skateboarding. I remember pushing around on one knee on a skateboard that my mom's friend who owned Vision Skateboards gave her before I could walk. Like I got my first. I ate shit for the first time and fell on my face before I could walk. So
That's
skateboarding
crazy, man.
just was and always will be in my blood, and I think that's sort of where I learned to build a lot of character in life. And I remember pushing around. I got really, really deep into it, and my whole goal in life was to become a professional skateboarder eventually. And that taught me so much about perseverance and just trying things differently, and just being, I don't know, just disciplined, and it taught me how to be social, and taught me how to interact with people, and taught me also probably not how to not interact with people in sort of a weird way, because that whole world is kind of dark and scary to a certain extent.
Right.
Skateboarding was really like what took my heart and soul early on in life. And I did that a lot. I ended up, it's funny where the one house I lived in two houses in California before I moved out here. And one of them was the first house, which was on 17th Street in Costa Mesa. And I lived next to the owner of TSA Skateboards at the time, which I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that old school skateboarding brand. But the guy then went on to start the shoe company Supra.
Okay.
So like I
Oh,
grew up
cool.
I grew up like skating his flat bar and his box that he had in his driveway, and I got to meet Chad Muska at his house. Like he pulled up in the Muscalade. I don't know if you know sort of the Chad Muska Escalade that he had.
I do
And
not.
like he kicked me out of the house because he was smoking weed, and he's like, "Kid, you can't be in here." But you guys know who Chad Muska is, though, right?
Nope. Is he a
No?
skateboard guy?
Oh my goodness, Chad Muska is legendary skateboarder. Legendary skateboarder.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. Guess what Mikey G was not doing when he grew up? Skateboarding a lick. So I know, all I know, this is the extent of my skateboard knowledge. I worked in the Embarcadero, which was like famous place in San Francisco, right? And then I knew Thrasher magazine started there. I'm pretty much done after that. And of course, I know who Tony Hawk is, and I know who Rob Deerdeck is. That's about it.
All right,
He knows more than me.
All right, good to know.
But please, we want to know about all these things because people that are listening, there's probably somebody in the crowd where their head is completely exploding right now.
Probably, yeah. If they know,
or they're like me, where it's like you said there's a reputation. I'll say this, at least where we were growing up in Maryland, all the skateboarders, they had kind of a reputation, and and I'll use the euphemism rebels, but it was kind of like frowned upon, and if you were in that crowd, I think it was an uphill battle for a lot of people, at least around here. It certainly was not embraced at all. And so I think I'm really curious about it, because just already what you said in terms of perseverance, discipline, social skills, just the idea of learning a skill and being that good at it, I think is a really good life lesson. And so I'm already fascinated with where you're going with it. So yeah, keep going. Let's do it.
Yeah. So skateboarding, like, I don't know, it was always something that I did. I was very interested in it. I met this kid, Josh, who lived down the street from me, and we would skate around and go hang out at the owner of Angel's house, who I was telling you about, TSA and Supra. And it just really helped me to build bonds. And like I would do it after school whenever I had free time. And again, I was saying I always played sports, but like when I was playing sports, I just couldn't stop thinking about skateboarding. And it wasn't until I think I was like 12 years old and I was playing baseball, and I was pretty good at playing baseball. I had been recruited to like all-star teams, and I was a pitcher and shortstop. And sure, I was young and like I didn't go into high school baseball, but I was good as a kid, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember, it's funny, Mikey, you mentioned Rob Deerdeck, because Rob Deerdeck was the figure in my mind when I had this conversation with my dad. My dad was always a coach of my baseball team, whatever team I was on, he was a coach. And I remember sitting there with him. I think we're in the parking lot of Orange Coast College for some reason. And I said, "Dad, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit playing baseball." And he said, "Why would you want to quit playing baseball?" I said, "I'm going to quit playing baseball because I'm going to become a professional skateboarder like Rob Deerdeck." And he's like, "Are you sure that's what you want to do?" It's like, I am 100% positive that that's what I want to do with it.
Right.
I was so young, but I knew that this thing just engulfed me and took my soul, and that was all I had ever wanted to do with my life. And I dedicated myself to it. I skateboarded every day. I skated with, a bunch of kids who, some of them turned out to be pro, and a few of them are pro for Plan B. I think these kids, the McClung brothers, skated with them for a little bit, and I would go to all the contests and meet a bunch of people. And I ended up meeting the team manager of this clothing company called Ezekiel. I don't know if you guys know them, but a pretty big skateboarding company, and just was doing everything I could to sort of make that happen. But that world, it's dark, man. It's like, it's a bunch of like, think about it. What parents are gonna, there's a certain type of demographic of people who are going to allow their children to go out, skate, take the bus to the skate park 2 cities away until 10 p.m. at night and come home. Like,
Yeah.
it's not your really like higher middle class family or
Right.
family that's like got a lot of structure, uh, that that is going to allow their kids to go out and do that. So you naturally fall in with this group of kids that are like, we have sort of free reign over the city to go and do what we want. And
And what's your
really,
interpretation of dark? Like, my interpretation of what you're saying is uh, the counterculture, drugs, alcohol, maybe doing some, uh, not so great things like vandalism or maybe just doing some breaking
I
the
mean,
law thing type of things. Not
you
major,
hit
but minor.
you hit the nail on the head. Yeah, it wasn't like we were going around robbing people,
Right.
sticking up stores with guns, and we weren't like that. But yeah, it's minor counterculture, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, vandalism. You're naturally vandalizing when you're skateboarding public property. There's a perfect marble ledge outside of a beautiful building. You're gonna go skate it, mess it up.
Yeah.
You get kicked out enough times, you start to build a disdain for security guards and for policemen, and you're told you can't do what you love somewhere. And you're out till all hours of night. Sometimes you don't have enough money to eat after you've been skateboarding all day, so you go to the liquor store and steal some stuff, and all very minor things. But
Right.
like, as you get older, like, it wasn't until recently I feel like there's been sort of a structure around skateboarding, and sort of it's been leveled up into a higher tier of individuals, and there's a lot of training and athleticism, especially with the introduction of skateboarding into the Olympics. But back then it was just like, it's just a bunch of ragtag kids who figured it out and were able to go pro and get in magazines and made some money. And it's those same kids just in a professional setting. So it was just a really weird, dark world. And I think that's sort of what started to lead me towards the ultimate path of what became, my downfall, but also probably the best thing that ever happened to me in my life. Um, I'll fast forward a bit, I guess. Skateboarded, I turned 16. I was in high school. I had felt like sort of an outcast freshman and sophomore year. All of my friends that I would skateboard with went to a different school across town. They were sort of our rival high school, right?
Right.
Hmm.
And I was at this other school, and like I knew these kids in
Uh-uh.
high school with them, but I didn't feel like I was close with them at all. I just felt like an outcast. I turned 16 and I started to get this desire to like fit in with this group of kids, right? And I would start going out and partying with them on the weekends, and I
Right.
would stop skating a little bit. And um, I remember like when I first started drinking alcohol, I was like, oh, I fit in with these people, like, oh, I can be the
Hmm.
funny guy. I can be the
Uh,
cool guy. I felt there's a line in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous where it says, I had arrived. And when I first started drinking, that's what I felt like. I felt like I had arrived to the world. Like I was finally able to be seen. I was funny. Girls
right.
thought I was handsome. The football players wanted to hang out with me. The cheerleaders wanted to hang out with me. They would let me hang out with them is probably a better way to put it.
Right.
And,
Hmm.
and that, sort of started something that turned into something much worse. But I stopped skateboarding more and more during those years, started hanging out, doing the popularity thing. And then I have a cousin, and this story starts to get interesting because my cousin moved down from San Bernardino, which is a city that's about an hour north um, of where I lived. And uh, I guess I'm missing some points here. Okay. So I'd started doing all that stuff. I got my first job at Trader Joe's. I met this guy who worked at Trader Joe's, and I knew that he sold weed.
Uh-huh.
And I said, hey, man, I need to make some extra money. This $8.25 an hour isn't cutting it for me, right? I have aspirations.
Dude,
Can you help?
entrepreneur spirit is starting early.
Can you help
Hmm.
me out? And he said, sure, I could help you out, man. I was like, can you front me a quarter ounce of weed? I'll sell it for you. I'll give you, this money plus interest. And then I'll do that enough times. I'll build my own stack of money to be able to then buy it from you. It's like,
Uh-huh.
I'll be your best customer. that eventually led into me selling like a quarter pound of weed at a time. And I don't know, I was like 17 years old. I had like $8,000 just stashed in a shoebox in my closet. I think my mom knew a little bit, but not really. I think she was just like, "You're doing okay, and as long as you don't go
Yeah.
to jail, like I don't want to know," sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was drinking, smoking weed heavily, obviously selling weed. I felt like I was on top of the world that
Right.
age with that much money, which now
How
it's
old were
like
you at this point?
I was like
17.
16, it was like 16, 17
Okay.
around then. I was like a sophomore, junior in high school. I had just gotten my first car, which was a 1995 Ford Windstar minivan that my grandparents had given me. So like
Nice.
I could fit all seven of us in the minivan, and we would go,
Nice.
smoke and party and whatever it was.
Right.
But at this time, I had already sort of veered away from skateboarding because I got caught up in sort of the social aspect of high school. And my cousin had moved down from San Bernardino, and he was always like my brother in a way, right? I grew up basically an only child until I was 13, when my mom had my sister, and we were so far apart, I never really connected with her. So my cousin to me was like my brother. We just didn't live together. He ended up moving down with me when I was about 16, 17, because he was getting into a bunch of trouble in San Bernardino. For those of you that don't know, San Bernardino is a pretty rough county and a pretty
Mm-hmm.
rough city itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's got just a storied history of drug abuse, and it's underfunded, and it's just a rough place.
Yeah.
Um, he had moved down to get away from this drug addiction that he was. I was like, okay, I'm not sure about this. I have to share my room with him, but okay, we'll do it. Loved the kid, right? He moved in with me. We ended up getting a job together at this place called Jack's Surf Shop in Huntington Beach on Main Street. Um, One night on the way home from work, he's like, "Hey, you want to try this?" Because he had met some guy who was the shoe salesman at Jack's, and the shoe salesman was like the coolest dude in the shop, right? And turns out he was into whatever drugs my cousin was into at the time. So we're driving home from work one night, and we had all rode together. And he's like, "Hey, you want to try this?" I was like, "Sure. What is it?" He's like, just try it." I tried it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is the best feeling ever." And what that drug was OxyContin. It was an OxyContin 80 milligram pill that you smoked off the tinfoil, right? And I was like, I can't believe I've been missing this my entire life. And
Mm-hmm.
and that happened multiple nights in a row, and then it happened weekends, and then before I knew it, I was like, "Hey, I think I want to stop." And my cousin was like, "Once it's happened for like 3 days in a row, when you stop, you're gonna get sick." And I was like, "Wait, what? What do you mean I'm gonna get sick?" Like I had no conception of really addiction or
Right.
physical withdrawals or anything like that. And he had told me that, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, okay, well this is kind of scary." I tried to stop and I couldn't because it had been weeks at that time, and I had
What
all
did
this
that?
money.
What you were getting sick? Was that you just couldn't get through the withdrawal part?
So it at the time it was really minimal, right? Because I
Right.
hadn't been addicted to it for a long time. But your
Right.
body builds this physical addiction to it, and you start to get a bad case of bubble guts, you get, diarrhea, you feel like you have the flu, you can't sleep, you get something called restless leg syndrome where your legs just won't stop moving.
Oh, I
Like you
got
just
that. I know that.
I
Sick.
know
it
I
just
got that with no oxy. Jeez.
I
Woo. All
didn't
right.
need
don't
the
ever go
oxy to
down that
get
road.
that, baby.
Yeah.
But it just it's really uncomfortable and something
Right.
you
Yeah.
just don't want to have to go through. And like, well, if I go and do this thing, I won't have to feel this way, right? And I know
Yeah.
that that will solve my problem, and I'll deal with it down the road. I can quit if I want to, was my
Right.
mindset.
Right.
So, I had all this money from selling weed at the time, and I was also working, and I just started buying all the drugs that I could, and it was like a daily thing. And that was really what ultimately led to like kind of my ultimate downfall at the age of 20. Um, I got into that, and then I fell into a group of people, and I'm kind of fast forwarding here, but I fell into a group of people after I graduated high school. It was some older kids who graduated before me, and I was partying with them every night that summer after I graduated. And I I was just doing Oxycontin. I was taking a bunch of Xanax bars. I was drinking a fifth of Jägermeister a night. Like I went from
Whoa.
drinking on the weekends with my friends, some Coors Light and smoking some weed here and there and selling it, to like Oxycontin, Xanax, heroin. I was smoking heroin, drinking
Bro.
fifths of Jägermeister by myself, like anything I could. And that happened pretty quickly. So 18 years old, that happened. That summer was just pure madness. I think it got to a point where like I couldn't hold down a job. I would go into work late in the morning smelling like alcohol, and I would get fired from one job, go to another job.
Right.
Same thing would happen. And it got to the point where I was like stealing money out of my mom's purse because I had spent all my money. I couldn't hold the job down. I think my cousin might have gotten kicked out at that point or left or something like that. And it was all kind of a blur to me, but it got really bad really fast, man.
Yeah.
And
Damn,
that
man.
ultimate, yeah. And that led to me going, I went to a sober living for 90 days, who was a friend of my dad's in Corona, which is like an hour north of where and I only did that so that I could move back into my mom's house because she knew what was going on at that time. She knew I was stealing money from her. That didn't work. I ended up having to go to a detox because I couldn't afford to go to detox. So like I went in and faked that I was drunk to get in, and they let me stay there for a week. I was getting high while I was there. That didn't work. Ultimately, what this all culminated in was my mom and my stepdad were going through a nasty divorce. I was only adding fuel to the fire. My sister was 7 years old at the time. A friend of mine who I had gotten close with had just overdosed. My mom had gotten fed up with me and she kicked me out of the house. During that time, I was writing bad checks in her name. I was stealing money out of her safe from one of her clients because she was doing estate sales and she just had their money in a safe. So I would steal 20, 40, 60 bucks at a time. And she ended up kicking me out. I was sort of homeless for like 2 weeks. I would stay on a friend's couch if I could. Sometimes I would just wander around until I could convince one of my buddies to let me stay there or whatever it was. It was just a really weird time. And I ended up getting a call that my friend who had overdosed, they were having the wake. My mom at this time had realized that I was stealing money from her. I think I stole thousands of dollars out of her safe. And I thought she was out of town. So I went to her house to go and get some clothes and probably steal the last of the money, right? At this point, I had started experimenting with some other drugs like methamphetamines. I had been up for about 2 days. I went to her house thinking she was out of town for the weekend. She had screwed the window shut so I couldn't get in because she knew what I was doing. So I took a screwdriver and I tried to pop it. I tried to pop the window over the track.
Yeah.
And I ended up breaking the window. Now, because I was up for 2 days at this point in time, I took the pieces of glass, stacked them on top of each other, put them on the ground. Because when I came outside, I was gonna put the window back together. Was my thinking, right? Like nobody's gonna notice. Nobody's gonna notice if I stack the pieces on top of each other, right?
Yeah, you got this. You got this at this point.
Yeah, it's like I got it figured out. I go inside, take like $2,500 out of my mom's safe. It was the last of the money that was in there. I get out the window. I'm trying to put the window back together, and my mom pulls up. She's like, "What the heck are you doing?" She ends up realizing like everything that I did. She ends up calling the cops. I left. Then later, I think like a week or two later, my friend had overdosed and we were going to his wake, and I mom and I had said, "Hey, I need to come and get some clothes for the wake." And detectives just so happen to be there, and they get on the phone and they say, "Hey, why don't you come over and speak with us? I want to have a conversation with you." I said, "Are you going to arrest me?" They said, "I'm not going to arrest you." It's like, "Oh, okay." So I go up, I talk to my mom, I talk to these detectives, and I'm going, I did it all. I'm so sorry. I need help. I'll go to rehab, whatever you want. And he says, "All right, turn around." And he cuffs my hands. And I was like, "Wait a second, what?" And he said, "I said I wasn't going to arrest you. I didn't say my partner would arrest you." So they had arrested me, then
You should have trusted your skateboard instinct,
I
not to
know,
trust security guards.
I know, man.
Anyway,
I know. So,
so, so-
so they, and mind you, I think a month prior to this, I had gone to jail for shoplifting for 2 weeks, just after getting out of a detox. It was bad news.
man, yeah, you
And,
were.
and I had said I was never going to be that guy. I was never going to be the person who goes to jail, never going to be the person who ends up like the people who I saw growing up, right?
Right.
And sure enough, I was in jail for 2 weeks, and I was like, well, that's never going to happen again. And then, my mom calls the cops on me, and I get arrested, and I go into jail. And we'll get to sort of the solution of this all shortly. I know it's long-winded, but
No,
No, it's good. This
Listen,
is good.
man,
This is
this
amazing.
is your platform. This is a fascinating story. So keep on going, brother.
appreciate it. So I go to jail. I'm in the same holding tank that I was in a month ago, right? And I'm sitting there going like, how did I do this again? This is after 4 years of just ruining everything. Drugs, alcohol, can't hold a job, stealing, kicked out, back in, kicked out. I'm sitting in this tank. I go to court one morning, and meanwhile, I'm withdrawing off of drugs like terribly. Like I'm just a shell of a human being, just
Mhm.
tattered. You just a place you don't want to be withdrawing from drugs from, in a jail cell with 70 other guys, right? I go to court. They say they have no context that I had stole from my mom. They just knew that I was being charged with break-in, entering, and a bunch of other things that I had came clean about. Like I broke into a bunch of cars and stole money and phones and all sorts of stuff that I had confessed to. So they said, "Hey, we're going to give you 6 years in prison and a strike on your record." And for those of you who don't know what the strike system is, if you get 3 strikes, you go to jail forever. So they're like, yeah, 6 years in prison, a strike on your record. I am floored. I get back to the cell. I call my mom on the payphone and I go, Mom, you don't understand what they're trying to do to me. They want to give me 6 years in prison and a strike on my record. You need to have, grandma and grandpa get me a lawyer, or you need to get me a lawyer. She's like, are you kidding me? After what you've just put me through for the last 4 years, you stole a bunch of money from me while we're going through this terrible time. Like, you want me to help you? Talk to your sister. She puts my 7-year-old sister on the phone. And I don't remember exactly what the entirety of that conversation with her was, but my 7-year-old sister goes, so does this mean you're not going to live with me anymore? And I lost it. I'm this 20-year-old kid who thinks I'm big and badass because I'm in jail again. Like, I'm not supposed to be here. This is a mistake. Surrounded by 70 other guys in this huge holding cell. Guys who are there for capital murder, guys who are there for like real deal stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Not to say that what I did wasn't wrong, but like just very different
Yeah.
lifestyles that these gentlemen had. And hearing my sister say that, I just lost it, crying my eyes out like this, sitting on the phone. And I don't know how the conversation ended, but I went back to my bunk. I was on the bottom bunk and I looked up and all you see is metal. And I thought to myself, for the first time, maybe in my life, but the first time as, a young adult, I am the only reason why I am here. I took full responsibility for my situation. And I realized that also means that I am the only person who is in charge of getting myself out of this situation.
Mhm.
From that day forward in jail, I remember writing a note to the guards saying, hey, when are you guys going to bring Alcoholics Anonymous in here? Or, hey, when are you guys going to bring Narcotics Anonymous in here? When can we go to church? Like, I need to do something.
Right.
They didn't give a shit. But, I was showing initiative. Like, I had grown up with a dad who was sober he ended up being sober for like 14 years. And so I knew sort of what I needed to do, right? Like I grew
Right.
up around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. And when I was in jail, they ended up sentencing me to 6 months in jail and 6 months in rehab, which I was extremely grateful for. My mom had wrote a letter to the judge and talked to my public defender, and they're like, yeah, we get it. 6 months in jail, 6 months in rehab. I ended up serving 4 months in jail. But during that 4 months, I went to every single panel of Alcoholics Anonymous I could go to, every single panel of Narcotics Anonymous, every church group, like literally every single thing I could do. And there was an instance in there where somebody had had some heroin and they had offered it to me. It was just enough to where if I took it, I would feel okay, but I knew I'd be sick again. It wasn't enough for me to like actually experience it, right? And I think in a way that was God sort of being like, hey, here's an opportunity for you. What are you going to do?
Right.
And
Little
I turned it
test.
down. Yeah, a test. And I turned it down and I was like, I can't keep doing this, man. I'm just going to be sick again. So yeah, I went to every panel I could go to. And the one thing that I heard while I was in is that the one thing you have to change is everything. That's the main point that I heard every single group that I had gone to. And there was this guy who had ended up coming in and speaking to us, and he was from the same city that I grew up in. And he was telling us about his journey of how he got sober, where he used to run around at. And it was the same area that I used to run around. And I could see everything he was talking about in my head. I was like, I know that house that you're talking about. I know that street that you're talking about. And my eyes were just locked on to this guy. And his eyes were locked onto me because he could tell I was getting the message. And I'll fast forward a bit and then I'll come back to it. But when I had gotten out of jail, I went to my dad's friend's house who was also sober. They're celebrating like 20 years of sobriety for him. That guy who was at the panel was at my dad's friend's house. And I was like, holy shit, man. Like if this isn't God talking to me and telling me like I'm on the right path,
Right.
I don't know what is, right?
Yeah.
And that was really powerful for me. But right before I got out of jail, I'll go back through the thing. I was right when I was getting out, everybody was like, so what are you going to do? Are you going to go some girls? Are you going to go party? I was like, you know what I need to do? Like I owe it to my mom and my sister to spend a day with them and give them some of my time and apologize for what I've done. And then I need to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, man, because I have no idea what to do.
Right.
And I got out, and the first day I went to a meeting, and a friend of mine who I used to run around with, do drugs, cause problems with, was actually leading that meeting. He had been sober for a while. And I was like, oh, that is so weird that this guy's leading this meeting. I didn't even know he was sober, right? And I go to stretch like this when the meeting starts, and he picks on me. And I was like, I don't have anything to say except that I'm new. I don't know what I'm doing. I've deleted every number out of my phone because I want to go back to that life and I need help. And he had introduced me after that meeting to somebody who ended up being my sponsor in AA and who ended up being one of my best friends in the entire world. And that led me into a group of probably 25 young guys between the ages of 18 and like 25 who were sober for multiple years in Alcoholics Anonymous. And that just ultimately changed my life. I ended up having to go check into rehab for 6 months. And it's funny because my dad's friend owned the rehab, and they had sent me, when I got out, they had sent me to the rehab that was for like people. It was like a halfway house for people who were in prison, not in jail.
Yeah.
And the first night I was there, like somebody snuck out to go smoke spice. I don't know if you remember spice. It's like a fake version of weed. And like he came back and he's like, don't tell anybody, otherwise your ass is grass. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not supposed to be here.
Oh yeah.
And I was freaked out, man. And 2 days later they had shipped me over to the right rehab I was supposed to be at. And I ended up being in rehab for 6 months, and I did every single thing I could possibly do while I was in there. I was just so grateful for the opportunity to be sober, and worked my steps, made amends, like did all the therapy I could do while I was in there. I went full force into this thing. And, you know, it's something that I still practice to this day. I still go to a men's meeting every Monday night out here in Atlanta. Shout out to Robbers Roost East.
Nice.
Yeah, man, it entirely changed my life. But that was like sort of the turning point where I really had to grow up and start getting my act together. You know,
Right.
I really had to start figuring out how to be an adult. And
So what age were you at this point?
I was 20 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
20,
celebrated my 20
you're like in the groups, you know, that really
Yeah.
trying to just start anew.
Yeah, and I celebrated my 21st birthday in rehab. So
Okay.
that was an
Jeez.
interesting way to celebrate not how I
Yeah.
thought I would spend my 21st birthday.
Not how a lot of people
right.
spend it. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
man, that was, and I'm assuming so. Like on this road to recovery, are we starting to get into your professional career? Or do you have some more to share before then?
Yeah, we do sort of start to dive into my professional career for
All right.
Okay,
So
bro,
we'll pause there.
that is one
Okay.
of the most heartfelt, like open stories we've had on the show, man. So one, just totally appreciate you being raw and open because not many people are like that. I'm like that too. But damn, that was amazing, and I think we have a ton of stuff to dive into. Maddie,
Cool.
I have questions. Is there something you want to go at first, or do you want me to take it away?
Well, I also want to mirror what Mike said, man. Thank you for going into detail because you know, you hear stories like that. First of all, by the way, you tell the story well, right? Not everybody is
Yeah.
a
Appreciate that.
You
storyteller.
did a great
And
job.
it was compelling, you know what I mean? I felt like I was watching something that I was hoping to not get a commercial break, you know what I mean? Like you want to keep going. Um and it's interesting because I think at least in this day and age, I mean, everybody has been touched by this world of addiction, whether it's
Yeah.
personally or whether it's a friend. Sadly, I have, well, I mean, one is too many, right? But few too many funerals, right? And so it's personal to a lot of people, and I think it's something that we all can relate to, but it's not something we discuss enough, right? And unless you're in the meetings, unless you're in that environment and know the power of talking about it, keep it in the front of your head so you know that this is a thing and you recognize other people are battling it too. It's very easy to isolate and pull yourself away. And so I'm excited just because starting this conversation, this could be something that people will be able to watch. And I just hope that people are learning that, like, this doesn't mean it has to be an end for your life. You know, you can hit, they call it rock bottom, but man, there's so, like, you can go from there, and you really can soar. There's some amazing success stories that have come from really, really tragic beginnings. And so I just think that that's important to share. But Mikey, what do you got?
I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Mikey, sorry to cut you
No,
off,
no,
but
no,
I
no,
just
no. Go for it.
I want to add to that too. I think I could have chose to look at it as like I'm screwed and this is how my life is forever, right?
Right.
Or
Yeah.
I could have chose to look at, hey, there's an opportunity here and I can try this thing and it might not work. But I'm so glad that I did because what was probably the darkest thing I had ever experienced in my life over that period of years, being in jail for the second time, turned out to be literally the jumping pad that launched me into sort of this life that I have today.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
decided to take that opportunity. I decided maybe that for that split second when my sister said, "So does this mean you're not going to live with me anymore?" For some reason, it was like, maybe there's a way out of this.
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep.
And being in that dark, deep, dark spot, like if anybody's listening to this and you're there, whether it's addiction or mental health or whatever it is, like there's always a glimmer of hope and you can turn it around 180 degrees and just live the best life that you could possibly think of. There's never a lack of options. So
Right.
I felt the need to add on to that.
Wonderful.
No,
Love it.
absolutely, man. I love that extra insight, and I totally agree. I think I told you I went through a major depressive order and mental health stuff. It was brutal, right? In a different way. I'll touch on that because you said something that resonated with me. But first, we talked about a lot of dark stuff, but there was light in there too, and I want to start there with which you said your parents were cool, open, creative people, right? And one of the things that you said is, you know, most parents, when their kid is gifted at a sport, like you said you were in baseball, and then one night you look at them and say, I'm just gonna skateboard. I'm not gonna do this. They probably would have, uh, there's some parents would just would have said, no, you're actually not gonna do that. You're gonna keep on playing baseball, right?
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I kind of I noticed that like, hey, your parents were open to letting you try things. Is there anything else that you kind of garner, like some life lessons or attribute to you being the way you are today?
You mean within like my relationship with my parents or
Yeah, just like
general?
influences from your parents growing up.
I think, it's really funny. A couple of months ago, I remember growing up and always thinking like, I wish my family was normal, right? Like I
Mm,
wish that I had all these friends who their parents were married, they owned a house. Like my parents were divorced. We were living in apartments or like a rented home. And
right.
I always felt different.
Hmm.
And a few months ago, I was having a conversation with my girlfriend about this, and we were talking about like um, things with other people's parents and how like even the best of parents from the outside, everybody still got their issues with their parents, right?
Right.
And it really made me think back to what I'm actually so grateful about with my parents, and they never put me into a box.
Hmm.
They never told me that I couldn't do anything. They let
Mhm.
me explore, and they taught me to be a free thinker,
Right.
which
Mhm.
I think when you're an adult and you're going into life, like I've never followed a formula. I've never subscribed to the idea of like, I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get a good job, I'm gonna buy a house, have a like at a point I wanted those things, but my soul never really resonated with that. And I don't think there's
Mhm.
anything wrong with that, right? But for me, it was always uh, I love thinking about philosophy. I love reading about philosophy. I love just thinking about things in a different way
Right.
and maybe not so much falling into a box. And I owe that all to both of my parents. They were so just welcoming and loving and like all you really need from a parent is for them to be loving of you and there for you, right? And they were
Mhm.
that. And, it took me some years to get to that point where I could understand and accept and respect and appreciate that.
Right.
But like that has resonated with me so much over the last few years and really heavily in the last 6 months, where it's like,
Yeah.
I'm grateful that they taught me to be a free thinker and
Yeah.
not listen to what somebody says and trust them because they think they have the answers. Like if somebody's smart, sure, listen to them, but like think about it for yourself and process it through it on your own. And is that something you want to believe or something you deem to be true? And like
Right.
follow the facts,
Right.
do the research for yourself. And yeah, younger, I
Follow
thought
the
it was a,
facts and do the research for yourself. That's one of our pillars, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
To
So
kind of question everything, right? Like people, it's especially this day and age of social media, they immediately see something online and think it's the truth. And it's like, guys,
Yeah.
come on
yeah,
now.
Well, yeah, and they've been groomed to do that because they've been told what to think, not how to think. And
Yep.
when you spend
exactly.
your whole childhood being told what to think, and then somebody posts something on social media, you do what you've been trained to do, right? And so they're a product of their training. And to your point, you're a product of yours. Your parents told you to be a free thinker, and critical thinking is rare these days, right? In fact, I
Agreed.
would say it's one of the more employable skills that's hard to find, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's really sought after to find somebody that can take a problem and say, and really think about it and solve it in a way that they didn't just immediately Google. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Not
So
have to be told exactly what to do. You can think and
yeah,
figure it out.
for sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
So
Mikey,
applicable.
did you have any other in terms of that?
Oh, have no, I don't have anything in terms of that. Do you want to have anything to add on to that
Yeah.
response?
So the only thing I want to also add into is because when you first started the story, you were going into how your parents were really kind of that like punk rock parents. You know what I mean? In terms of like their vibe, they were young, they were into that. Did that change, or did they remain kind of counterculture themselves? Because, a lot of the times, I mean, look, I know my friends that were in that kind of culture growing up, and they're all like office jobs now and, just regular upstand. And so, did you see that evolution occur in your parents, or how did that go?
Absolutely, I saw them grow up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny to think about, like, again, they were 19 and 21 or 20 and 22 or something like that when they had me, and, like, I didn't realize it at the time. My mom just sent me a text message, the other day, and she's like, "Here's something crazy," to my sister and I. She's like, "I moved in to the house that we live in now when I was Johnny's age." And I was like, "What the hell? That's crazy." Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was already 13 years old
Right.
when you were 32. Like, that blew my mind, but, like, yeah, I got to in a way, sort of, like, grow up with
Yeah.
my parents, obviously very
Yeah.
different, but
Yeah.
Sure.
it was closer to mine and my sister's relationship than it was, like, my sister and my mom's relationship,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And, I saw them very much evolve and grow up, and they're great individuals, and I love them both dearly, but, yeah, I mean, my mom will always be punk rock and counterculture, like, no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
She
That's
she just
awesome.
she doesn't give a fuck, man. She will tell you how it is, and I love it, and my dad is the same way, but now, like, he owns a home on a lake in, like, Southern California, and my mom is a property manager and, like, takes care of my sister and, like, has a pretty normal life, and very different from how I grew up, but
Right.
yeah, they absolutely changed, but at their core, very much they will be punk rockers until the day they die, no question about it. They can't get rid
That's
of their tattoos and their
Right.
love for punk rock music, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, for sure. I love
Yeah.
it.
And you bring up
Very
a
cool.
something else interesting, because I thought, so my mom was 19 when she had me. Um, and I think about this a lot when you just talked about it with my mom is, same thing, right? When she was in her early 30s, like I was already 10 years old. And I'm like, when I was in my early 30s, I couldn't even get my life
Yeah.
together, right?
Right?
And I'm
Yeah.
like, shit, man, how in the hell do you have a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
Um, but what I'm getting at is it's looking back, we just have to have cool, we're able to have cool conversations.
Yeah.
Um, because I was able to see her evolve and grow up. And now, when I was young and mad and frustrated at her, now being in my early 40s, I can look back and be like, oh, I get it now, right? But when you're
Yeah.
in it, it's totally different, right? It's totally
Yeah.
different.
Well, and
Y y
and to that point, man, it's wild to think, but I know it's different, but that moment in that jail cell when you were looking up at that grid underneath of, in the bunk, and you realize this is up to you, like, it's wild to think that at some point your mom was pregnant and probably had a similar moment. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, it just got real and I'm gonna have to change. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of cool because, to go from that to being able to willing to handle your phone call uh like a parent and not a friend, which is a big confusing term these days, for whatever reason. But yeah, man, that was some tough love. But man, she didn't want to deprive you of your moment. You know what I mean? And I don't know if that
Yeah.
was on purpose or not. Maybe that's a whole different discussion. But it is wild to think how that kind of came to fruition.
That is really interesting to think about, and that's a topic that gets brought up a lot when I bring up this sort of situation of how I got sober, and it was ultimately because my mom called the cops on me, right? And, like, from
Yep.
an outsider perspective, no context, if you just hear, mom called the cops on you and you went to jail, they're like, "How did you deal with that?" And there was never really a part of me, like, once I made that decision where I was like, "Oh, I'm the reason I'm here," there is never a part of me that was resentful of my mom. I was ultimately just like, I'm so grateful that she saw this, and I couldn't imagine how hard it was for her to call
Yeah.
the cops and send her baby to jail, her
Right.
first child who she, like, I
All
just
the
could
memories. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that. I couldn't imagine that. The closest thing I have to that is a dog, and, like, sending him to, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
obviously so different, but it's like, I just trying to put myself in my mom's shoes. Doing it to like a best friend even, or to my sister. Like, it's just, it's crazy to me. And I'm so grateful that it happened that way. And it was literally the impetus for the life that I have today.
Yeah.
And yeah. To share. It's funny to think about that. She had that moment too, where she's
She
like,
had a
oh,
moment.
shit
Yeah.
just got real, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you like philosophy, or I should just say philosophical kind of thoughts and discussions, I mean, the bottom line is we all have to have that moment at some point, right? There's a
Absolutely.
reckoning, and life has a way of putting it on us, one way or another. That's for sure. I mean, there's a reason we're called midlife crisis, man.
Hey, you know what? Some people never face that question and
Yeah.
wonder why life is so hard.
Yeah.
They get
You're
it.
right.
They get the question, but they just decide to go around it a little
Deflect
bit.
and
I know,
divert.
man.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, and those are some of the saddest people, right? Is it because
Yeah.
they're at the end of their life, still at the corner of the bar, sipping on a beer, and still they're just bitter, right?
Yeah,
Because
blaming everybody else.
they had the chance, but they never did. And I had a question before this, but I was actually gonna, now that we're talking about, make a comment. It struck home with me, man, because, well, one, you said the same exact thing. There's such a clear picture in my mind one day, and what I always struggle with is, it wasn't like, I think it was like I've just sustained misery for so long, and my brain was literally just ready to implode at any moment. And I woke up one day and I had the same thing, man. I just like looked in the mirror and I was like, holy shit, man, it's me. Like, I have to fix me, right? And like that, if when you're bad, and if you don't have that conversation, I don't think there's any way of getting out of it. And then the second thing I just wanted to comment on is, like, I had then a similar moment to you, is when you broke down crying because of your sister. Mine was a version of, my mom called me because I had since then used her as my therapist, which is not a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And she called me up and she was like, I've been racking my brain. She's like, I can't understand what's going on. And then she said, the only thing I can come up with is when your life fell apart and my parents got divorced, we moved into a new house. And I had just bought this like expensive home in the Bay Area, and I was terrified of money. And when she said that, dude, like, lost it. Uncontrollable cry for like 3 hours straight, like couldn't stop. And there was something inside of me that had like been released, right? And I really do look at that moment as like this day one of my true recovery. Do you have any thoughts on that, or do you feel similar vibes?
Oh man, thank you for sharing that. I
Yeah.
think it's like the first life and the second life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when you really knew yourself, or when you really started to experience life, and you really started to see. There's this guy, his name was Joe Millard. He died with, I don't know, 47 years of sobriety or something. He used to box in the Navy, just
Mhm.
this old fucker who would say the greatest jokes, and like, he was the best. He was
Mhm.
part of my Tuesday night men's meeting in Southern California when I lived out there.
Yeah.
And he would say, the beauty of Alcoholics Anonymous is that we get to live two lives.
Yeah.
Luckily, they're in the correct order, right? And,
Right.
you know, I had this life of
Mm.
destruction and darkness, and now I like it's so hard for me to put myself back into that place, because it's
Right.
been 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But every year on my anniversary of my sobriety, I try to sit and meditate on it and think back to like how bad it was.
Yeah.
I'm so far removed, it's hard sometimes. Just having a conversation about this with a friend the other day. But it's like, I can't believe that that was me, you know? And now,
Yeah.
like, stepping into that, just from the day I made that decision on the phone and said, I need to do something different, like, just it's a different, I don't know how else I would have been able to unlock that and
Mhm.
experience the other side of life, spirituality, progress, even any semblance of like having a decent life, let alone success. I don't know how else I would have gotten there without going through such a dark and tragic time.
Same,
And
man.
it's all, and it almost, right, it like forces you to look at it and be like,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for that. I would never wish that on my worst enemy, and I would never
Right.
to go back to that, but, like, so much gratitude for the fact that I had to experience that.
Yeah, dude.
That's
I
not to
mean,
say everything's perfect, right? But
Yeah.
it never will be, man. Life's the hardest
yeah.
thing you'll ever go through. But dude, everything you're saying is literally giving me chills. Like it's
Yeah.
crazy, man. And it's, like Maddie said, everybody goes through it just in different ways, man. And I even knew this, like inherently, like because I used to lead big teams and stuff, and I don't know, I must have read it, or I just always knew that I was kind of more fucked up than I came off to be. But I always would say,
Right.
you can't be your best until you see the worst, and that so resonates so true because dude, when you do get through it, man, your just perspective on life is totally different, and you can, and you firmly believe that you can achieve greatness, however you define that, right?
Yeah.
It's
To
amazing.
over to overcome something that dark and to even just come out of it and be at baseline, even if you're like scraping by for the rest of your life. Like that in and of itself
Right.
is such a victory, you
Oh,
know?
it's
Massive victory.
huge. It's huge.
Yeah.
And to
Like,
then redefine, which I have done many times, right? I'm thinking to myself, man, we have this podcast. I know our content's killer. I'm frustrated that these people have hundreds of thousands of followers, and how am I ever going to get there? And then I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right. I was going second to second trying to live for a year straight. I'm going to be
yeah,
Mhm.
man.
okay, right?
Yeah,
Gonna be
man.
okay.
Like,
Absolutely.
and
Well,
having that reference point will never change. And it really does make you feel like you can accomplish anything, which is such a massive mindset to be able to have to be successful in the future. So
Yeah, and
go ahead, Manny.
I mean, and I know, well, because we can. I already know the three of us could talk about this till the sun comes up, because this
yeah,
is the stuff that makes me happy to discuss. These are real
same.
life things, and this is the stuff that people need to hear. And I even push it. I push into the fire a little bit and tell people, I would say something is wrong if you don't experience a trauma or the pain or the suffering. You call it whatever title you want. People can call it the period in the desert. There's all these like great books with analogies that describe this in a much more pleasant way. But at the end of the day, like trauma is what makes us what we are. Our confidence is derived in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
When you learn to ride a bike, I mean, what would it be like if you never fell?
right.
What would it's like
Boring.
yeah, well, but on top of that is where's the accomplishment,
Yeah.
right? It's when you cram for that exam and you studied harder than you ever studied before and you get that A minus, but you're like, that feeling is way different than the person that just woke up and got the A plus. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Um, there's differences and with skateboarding, it's like you said, you wiped out before you could even walk. I mean, that's part of it too. You look back at all the times you couldn't do it, hurt yourself, rolled an ankle, spilled, hurt your knee, banged up, but all these scrapes and bruises, but they define us. And I think if for some reason, like we've created, I don't want to make it some giant societal thing, although it probably is, but we shield people from this so much. We do so hard to give somebody a pill or to give somebody something else to focus on, or a video game or junk food or something to anesthetize ourselves from these traumas. But it's the actual and it works. It kept you, Mikey, till in your 30s to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
Mm-hmm.
good they work. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it just took a conversation with your mom. And for you, in terms of like you had to be you literally had to be separated from everything and be in jail to get to this point where your mind's like, holy shit, this is me. I need to do this. And man, I think I think the reason it's so good after that is because that's the answer people need to hear. That's the real answer, which is
Right.
when you realize, and it can't be told. Like, you can't tell me that. I
That's
can't
the
tell
hard
you that.
part. That's the hard
I
part.
have to tell myself
Yep.
I can get out of this. And man, when that belief switch changes from off to on, everything is a different perspective from that moment. And it's like you can start embracing the failures, you can start embracing the grind because you know what it's doing and what it's building in you. And I just think that that's a massive part that's missed these days.
Yep.
Because it's like we want to avoid it. And I don't know where it comes from. Is it kindness? Is it like you said, you don't want to, you said it very well, Mnmlty. I mean, you can't even imagine what it must have been like for your mom to send her boy to this, right? And here's the truth. Most people just wouldn't because it's too hard.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Right.
but look what it did for you. And that's what they don't understand. They're denying if this was something you love, you know what I mean? You have to let them walk into the fire, so to speak, so they can emerge and realize, oh wait, I won't actually get burned here. I can thrive. And that's huge.
Yeah.
They're being denied of their heroic moment
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
life. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. In any good player, any good story, there's that crescendo and that heroic moment. If you
Got it.
don't have that, what like
Got
what
it.
what do
Right.
you got, right?
Yeah.
It's really
Dude, amazing. This is the best. This is by far, you take the cream of the crop of the best episode 1 we've had to date on the show, and we've had like 150 people on the
Appreciate that.
show, so
Appreciate
you
that.
should feel
Do I
good.
get an award or like can I put it in?
We're
the
gonna
back of my
make you a red beard NFT, a 101, and I'll send
Oh,
you
that would be
Exactly.
amazing, dude. That'd be amazing.
a
Yes.
101.
Real quick, before we hop onto the professional side of things, you mind if I take a quick bathroom break?
Dude,
Do it,
I was
man. You're
about to do
drinking
that
that water.
too. Maddie,
You're
Beautiful.
drinking that
interact
water.
with chat.
I'm
Nah,
gonna-
don't you dare do that to me, Mikey. You
I
gotta
gotta
hold
go.
on.
I gotta
Mikey,
You're
go.
like-
I'll go. Let me go real
God,
quick.
you're
and
good.
then
Y'all
you
go.
Mikey.
You're good.
Yeah.
I'll,
Hold on. I'm gonna stay on while Mikey goes because
okay.
we can't leave the people hanging, you know?
I agree. Although I will say Chad is loving this. They're loving this conversation.
I love
and
it.
a lot of people are relating to it. And like I said, man, I mean, listen, even if it's something you don't deal with directly, you know people. You know what I mean? And it's
Ad-
huge.
Addiction affects something. I don't remember what the statistics are, but it's like it affects literally everybody in the world, either family member or a friend, or like the amount of people that I've had to see pass away from this disease of alcoholism or drug addiction, or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. Like I'm just one in a small, tiny speck of this disease, and I,
Yeah.
you know, my girlfriend doesn't deal with it, but like she had a couple friends who passed away from it. And
Yeah.
it's like it just touches every aspect of people. And it's sad, man. And
It's very sad. It's very sad. And I think one thing that, again, kind of going macro with it is I think we also forget that these are the addictions that have programs. But what
Yeah.
people neglect is that, like, if you resort to food to make yourself feel better and you can't stop doing that, it's an addiction, right? If
Yeah.
you can't stop working out because you're not happy with what you see in the mirror and you have to be in the gym all the time, even though everybody says you're jacked, you're ripped, you don't need any more supplement, it's an addiction, right? If
Yeah.
you can't stop playing video games because it's just easier to do that than to face what's going on in the real world. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying any of those things independently are bad. I am saying, though, that when it becomes the solution and you can't deprive yourself of it, it's very similar. I'll say that in terms of the mentality there. And what's sad is that society will coddle people with that or help them pretend that it's not actually the same thing that you faced.
Absolutely.
And they don't understand it's paralyzing their progress just the same.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a book recommendation.
Oh,
It's
we
from
love
Hit
that.
me.
It's from Russell Brand. It's called, I believe it's called Recovery. And as you know, Russell Brand has been sober for years.
Right.
But
Yeah.
what he basically did was he took the 12 steps
Uh-huh.
and put them into a framework for anybody. So if you're listening to this and you have drug alcoholism or overeating or gambling or whatever it is, but you think you might have something, like check out that book. I've taken a few of those principles and put them into my morning prayers that I say every day.
Right.
And like, even for somebody who knows the 12 steps and has done them multiple times, taking it just from like a normal everyday perspective, obviously it's not, but
Yeah.
and apply, like I recommend that book 10 times over. So
just download it on
All right.
Audible, bro.
Do your bathroom break.
now
Do
I'm
your
going to go to the
bathroom
restroom.
break. All right, thanks. Oh, man. So, Mikey, gallon of water a day. Is that what you're doing?
Bro, look at this shit.
And you're feeling real nice?
Look at that.
Wait, where's the level? Put your finger on where the level is right now.
It's there because it's empty, Ricky.
Congratulations.
Day 3, dog.
You did it.
You know how long it takes to form a habit? Around 60 to 70 days.
At least. I don't know. I feel like that's normal people. I feel like for me, about 120 days. So, dude, how good is this conversation?
I have a lot more. Oh, this is mind-blowing, fascinating stuff.
We're in the good stuff now, man. This is the stuff that counts. This is the stuff that frees people, man.
Well, you ready for my segue into his business career? It's actually going to start with please tell me the principles you've learned of entrepreneurship from selling drugs.
Oh, there you go. All right. You know what, though? I do have one question, though. I want to ask the question.
Okay, you ask the question, and then I'm going to do the
and then we'll go into
entrepreneurship, drug selling.
So, well, mine's kind of an umbrella. It goes over everything, but I'm curious to hear Mnmlty's take on it.
Man,
so.
I feel like we're gonna be lifelong bros. It's gonna be.
I love this.
It's gonna be
Can
a
we just
long friendship.
Can we take a real quick second and look at that chair he has? That looks like a real nice chair.
That looks very comfortable. Is
Are you guys talking about my chair?
Yeah,
we're talking about your chair
as it looks.
You know, it's funny, man. So in California, this is just an Amazon, like, I don't
Basics?
know, a knockoff. No, not Amazon Basics, but it's a knockoff of the Herman Miller sale.
Okay.
But when I was in California, there was an office building on PCH that was liquidating all their furniture and giving it away.
Oh.
And I picked up this office chair randomly. And it wasn't until like 6 months later, I was laying on my bed looking at it, and I was like, is that a Herman Miller chair that I got for free? It's like a $700 chair. I was like, wait, what? So I couldn't bring it with me to California. And when I moved into my new house, I was like, I'm not spending $1,000 on a chair, so I'll get the Amazon version. And this is just as comfortable.
I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
Amazon version. After this, you got to send me a link, because let me just tell you, I'm on a 3-month rant on how bad these gaming chairs are for people.
Yeah.
And how bad it. If I wasn't, the only reason I've kept it is because I'm moving, and I'm just gonna junk it and then just get a new one, because there's no sense in moving it. But yeah, man, I'm gonna need a link for that.
I'll send you the link. 100%.
My back needs it.
Remind me, it's fantastic.
Oh, I'm so excited. All right, so
Matt's
one
got
more question.
I got another one, and then we'll move to Star Wars episode 2.
Then we'll move to episode 2.
Let's do it.
And this is just an overarching question. Feel free to answer as much as little as you like. But you've mentioned faith several different times. And I'm just curious how that has been a part of your life, specifically the part we've heard. If that was something that, did you find that through this process of kind of redemption, post going to jail and being part of the meetings? Has it always been there? Is this something that was just part afterwards? I'm just curious how that fits in your life. And you said morning prayers, things like that. Is that something that you have? How has that benefited you? Because I think that's also a really important component.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking that. I grew up like I never didn't believe in God. My mom was a Christian, but like we didn't go to church together. We never did things like that as a family. Religion wasn't really spoken about in my house with my mom or my dad. I remember the crew of kids that I used to skate with. This church would open up like a makeshift skate park at the beginning of church on Tuesday nights.
Nice.
And I remember going and doing that at 13, 14 years old, mainly because I wanted to see girls and go skate, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I wanted people to see me skateboard. And that was
cool.
really the main reason. Yeah, I thought so, at least. And I would go to church, and it was always something that was sort of like there, but I didn't have like a strong connection to it. I would pray sometimes. I remember my grandma, I would be afraid at night that somebody would come into the house or whatever, and she's like, let's pray. And
Yeah.
let's pray for God to surround our house with angels.
Right.
And it's funny because I've been doing that prayer for like 25 years now.
Yes.
But I never thought about it. It was just a thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got sober and started working the steps. And part of, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is coming to understand your own version of your higher power, right? And
Okay.
for me, that was sort of like a weird conception to get over because I wasn't ever against Christianity or religion, but like in my mind, it was always like there's so many religions and every single one of them believes that they're right,
Sure.
and there's no shadow of a doubt in their mind that why does it have to be one religion? Why can't it just be like God? And that was what stuck out the most to me. And to me, like I do go to like Christian churches from time to time and I'll watch some sermons because I feel like I can pull a lot of great things from them.
Sure.
But I don't prescribe to one religion per se, but I do. They are sort of a spirit of the universe that underlie everything. And I know that is what has given me the opportunity to live the life that I have today. And I pray in the morning. And these are habits that I picked up because of Alcoholics Anonymous, because when I got in, they're like, hey, I know this sounds weird. We're not going to tell you what God to pray to, but like you got to build a connection with a higher power of your own understanding.
Right.
So I pray every morning, I pray every night, I pray throughout the day, and it's nothing really structured, but I just sort of talk to God. And that's been literally like the backbone of my life, because without that, I wouldn't be sober. And if I wasn't sober, anything else in my life would not exist.
Yeah.
So like those two things to me are of utmost importance beyond anything else in my life.
So just ask a follow-up question on that in terms of, so in believing in a higher power, then the exercise of prayer is that you then believe this higher power, whatever, how you encapsulate it, listens and does have some ability to influence your life, correct?
Yeah, I would say that. Absolutely. I think I don't know if it has the ability to influence my life or that like it just does, whether I'm paying attention to it.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
I meant in terms of like without that, right, prayer would seem somewhat redundant.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
yeah, no, yeah, that makes sense.
just
Yeah.
an interesting kind of thought, because you're saying these things, and yeah, it's just a fascinating topic. I talk about Mike and I both talk about the importance of balance, but me specifically, I'm really big on mind, body, spirit, and spirit can be a lot of things, as you said, to a lot of people, right? But I do think it is one of the three critical components, right? I think there's a part of there that affects our soul, right? And I
Absolutely.
found that for me,
Yeah.
and I just think it's very important that people hear it, because it's like you use this as an important part of your recovery, and to what you just said. Without that, you're not sober, and without that, without soberness or sobriety, I should say, you wouldn't be able to have achieved what you've achieved. And so, it's just interesting to hear that. And I will say this: it's interesting talking, and even when you read and you follow these books about people who have done these crazy, amazing things, they all go back to that component as well. There is an element, and I'll just
Mhm.
say the spirit, of those three columns, they have that spirit one checked off, whatever it
Absolutely.
might be. And I just think that that's important to note, because some people avoid it at all costs, and it's like, man, you're missing one of the fundamentals. And so that's
Yeah,
all. Thought that
I
was good.
couldn't I couldn't agree more. It makes me think about the Russell Brand book, and one of the things that I pulled from his, and it's so funny how this works, right? One of the things that I pulled from his book, and one of the prayers that I say every morning is synchronicity. I pray to see the signs and guidance of your unseen world. Now,
Yeah.
when coincidences occur, uh, I will look to see if there's anything I could learn from them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
funny, when I met my girlfriend, she started talking to me about these things called synchronicities. She
Mm-hmm.
hasn't read the book, but like same exact concept,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that in and of itself was a synchronicity, which I thought was fascinating. But also,
Yeah.
like, even if that's just how you look at God when coincidences happen to you. It's like, oh, something's happening, right?
Right.
Like for me
Yeah,
personally, I don't think there's such thing as coincidences. I think that's God working in my life.
for
You could
sure.
choose to look at it however you want, but I think that's a really easy way to like bridge that gap if you're on the fence of God or spirit or whatever it is. It's like, hey, just look for coincidences in your life and think like maybe there's something that caused that coincidence. You
Yeah,
know what I
For
mean?
sure.
It's
absolutely.
not trying to tell anybody how to get in touch with God here, but to clarify, but it is interesting. Yeah.
No, and it's unfortunate that like, uh even talking about that and like like forums is almost shunned upon at this point, and it's like we should be
Yeah.
able to have an open conversation about spirituality because it is absolutely a building block uh to being a solid fundamentally good human being, I think.
Yeah.
um
Agreed.
And you can
Absolutely.
approach it, to your point, approach it like Russell Brand. I mean, he was just inquisitive. The guy is just fascinated by learning. And if
Yeah.
you listen to him talk, you can tell he truly is eager to learn, and he wants to learn from everybody he talks to. He's like deeply interested in who they are,
yeah,
why they think the way they think, how they came to those conclusions, which is something that all of us seem to also share, right? And it's fascinating. And I think if you approach that journey that way, to your, you're saying like, I don't want to tell anybody how to find it. Neither do I. What I want to tell you to do is just eagerly search, find what you find. You know what I mean? But don't be afraid to look. I think that's
Yeah.
the key.
yeah,
And
Absolutely.
that's what Russell Brand talks a lot about. Like, don't put yourself in a box that somebody else put you in. Let yourself, search and come to your own conclusions. Free
yeah,
thinking, critical
yeah,
thinking. Come to your
Exactly.
own conclusions, and that's
yeah,
massive.
Ask questions, man. And
Ask
yeah,
questions.
if you're so certain that it's not there, then you'll find nothing, and that's
Yeah,
cool too.
yeah,
And no
yeah,
shame,
yeah.
no
whatever.
shame.
It wasn't
But
what
at least
happened for
you'll be
me, but
confident in it.
Yeah,
yeah,
you'll
Yeah.
still
exactly.
learn. There's
Exactly.
So
one of the guys that was on our podcast, couple, what was it, last week, got me onto this 5 a.m. club book. Have you ever heard of it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I
yeah.
started reading it, and it's literally like a lot of the stuff verbatim we're talking about.
Are
um
you waking up at 5 AM now?
I need to finish the book first before I try to do that. I mean, listen, the
Yeah,
main moral of the story is uh discipline is massive, right?
absolutely,
And
100%.
being able just to wake
Hey,
up at 5 a.m. for decades on end takes discipline. Although
you know
the whole point too is at some point it becomes part of your daily routine, and you're not actively thinking like, oh, this takes discipline, right?
yeah, yeah,
Waking up at 5
absolutely.
a.m., I don't know
Dude,
about that quite
I
yet.
think that will
bro.
always take discipline as long as I'm alive.
Right,
Doesn't
I
matter.
hope
right.
There's
I
no way.
hope you know that is absolutely going to be a YouTube short.
Why?
Oh,
I'm
that's
not
good.
sure about that
That's
one.
so good. Oh,
I
such a
need to
great
finish
question
the
and
book
answer.
first.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna
need to finish
finish
the
the
book
book.
first.
That was a
That's
great.
good.
I'm
What
not
was your
quite.
question,
I'm
Mike?
not quite done. All right. So to move on to Star Wars Episode 2, I have an interesting question, and if you don't want to revisit, because I know it was one of the darker moments of your upbringing, I actually think there is some business learning, and I've actually heard it from many of people that used to deal drugs in the past. And the question is, when you were dealing drugs, was there anything that you actually could learn from business and entrepreneurship because the base of you going to a guy saying, give me a quarter of an ounce or
Yeah,
whatever you asked for free, but I'm going to pay you interest and then get you back and then get your money, and I'm going to be your best customer you've ever had. That is, in essence, running a business and entrepreneurship. So the thought there is, were there any learnings from that part of your life?
It's so funny to think back about that because I'm like, I have no name for him, right? Like I wasn't like, oh, I think I had read 50 Cent's book uh before he came out with the movie.
Okay.
like right before that, and I was like, yes, this is the life I want to live,
Right.
minus the getting shot part,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think that's what led me into that mindset of like asking him to front me a quarter ounce.
Okay.
Or
And
I don't know. My mom was always very entrepreneurial, and I think that she
Mm.
instilled that in me very much.
ooh,
Um,
tell me a little bit
but
more about that.
she like ran when she had me, she's like, "Well, I can't work, so I gotta run a daycare." So, like, she would watch me while running a daycare so she could earn enough money to continue to take care of me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then when I got older, she ended up running an estate sale business and doing very well. And she just always has had that, I don't know if it's entrepreneurial or just like hustle by any means necessary to make it,
Right.
and that was always instilled in me since a very young age, and I just picked that up.
Right.
Um,
And it manifested itself in selling
yeah,
drugs.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
And I
obviously
think
later on in life. But I thought
later
it
on in
was an
life,
interesting segue
yeah,
into then your professional career. So we can move there. Like you're getting better. You're
yeah,
20,
21 now.
21,
Celebrated that birthday.
yeah.
celebrated birthday in rehab, and you know you're gonna get your life together. Take us through your professional career, kind of up to Web3, because you did some cool things. You had your own company. You made it to kind of directors, sales for a street brand company. So take us through that journey.
So yeah, I mean, I'll go from rehab to then. I got a bunch of jobs at. I had worked at a bunch of pizza places before I was sober. When I was in rehab, I was allowed to like go and walk around and look for work for a month before I got out.
Right.
And I ended up walking into this place called Pizza Land. And when I went in to talk to them for the interview, they got an order for like 20 pizzas. And they're like, we don't have the staff. Can you stay and help us? And I was like, absolutely. And I banged out like 20 pizzas for them. And they're like, you're hired. You got the job. I was like, this is amazing. Right.
Nice.
This is
A
sick.
synchronicity, we'll
Right.
call it.
There
Right.
you go.
I thought that was so cool. Got a job at a pizza place. Then I got a job at a juice bar, and I was making tips. And I remember I could leave work and go buy food at Wahoo's Fish Tacos for the first time in my life. And I was like, this is amazing. I could buy my own, like, I could buy takeout,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I was so broke.
Yeah.
Mind you, after I got sober, I wasn't allowed to have a bank account for 3 years because I got blackballed from all the banking institutions. I got on some list, so it was all cash.
Yeah. Which is its own conversation. But
Its
yes.
own conversation, yeah. So, so I got a job at a juice bar, and then when I was working at that juice bar, there's this gentleman that used to come in, and I had figured out a side hustle, and this was totally shitty of me to do. Mind you, I was in sobriety, like trying to live like the good, like a proper way of life, but I would sell juice cleanses on the side for cash without the company knowing. And that company is now known as Nectar Juice Bar. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them, but they're all over the Southwest. Um, they had 2 stores at the time, and I would take these juice cleanses and sell them on the side. And there's this guy who came in and he paid with this credit card that had the clothing brand I Am King on it. And I was like, I've seen you guys around. Like, do you work for them? He's like, oh, I own the brand. I was like, that's cool. And I shuffled that into the back of my memory. This guy could possibly, because I had always wanted to work in fashion. I always wanted to own a clothing brand. I always wanted to, like, that was just like, if it wasn't skateboarding, it was fashion for me,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Because fashion was such a huge part of what drew me to skateboarding, especially with Chad Muska being sort of the fashion icon of that era of skateboarding, right?
Yeah. You even mentioned that when you were talking about Ezekiel.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, so I shuffled that in the back of my mind, and I went from working at a juice bar, and while I was at the juice bar, I met that guy, and we'll get back to him later. Um, but I had met this girl, I'd started dating her, and somehow the topic came up of me becoming a model. And I was like, I guess I'm handsome enough. I don't know. You really think I could do that? Like, that was so foreign and weird to me, like
Right.
being a male model, right? So I went and I got on this website called Model Mayhem, and I remember reading this thing that said, if you just put a little bit of energy every day into what you want to achieve, just a little bit every single day, you'll be surprised at the results. And I was, working a job for minimum wage, making $20 in tips a week at the time. Like I was like, I knew nothing about business or anything, but I got onto Model Mayhem, which is like a website where you can post your portfolio and get to work with people and kind of book jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So I would email 5 people a day because that was the limit for the free version. And I would email 5 people a day asking if they would do something called TFP. And that was trade for photos or something along those lines. So I booked photo shoots with photographers who were looking for models. And I built up my portfolio that way over the course of like 3 or 6 months. And then I had what I thought was a good enough portfolio. And then the husband and wife who worked at the store above Nectar Juice Bar, they were like, hey, we know somebody who owns a modeling agency in Beverly Hills. He used to own this huge modeling agency called IMG or something like that. They're like, he started a new boutique agency. I could put you in touch with them. I had gone to Wilhelmina. I had gone to Ford Model Portfolio, and they're just like, whatever, kid, get out of here, you know? And I went to this modeling agency from those friends, and he signed me. He's like, we got you. And it's funny because after he signed me, I had ended up booking a bunch of photo shoots with Young and Reckless myself. You remember the clothing brand Young and Reckless, Rob Dyrdek's cousin's brand?
Yeah, Drama. Isn't that
Yeah.
Drama's brand? Does it still exist?
I don't know, man. I think so, to like a small extent. It's not what it used to be, though.
Right.
So I was booking a bunch of photo shoots with them, being a fit model, and I was in some lookbooks and stuff like that. Like I was gaining a little bit of traction. But the way that those photo shoots ended up coming up, that guy Andy, who owned I Am King clothing from the juice bar, he ended up coming in one day, and I think he was like, hey, we're looking for our lookbook. Like, would you be interested? Okay, that's how it happened. He asked me to do that, and then I went the modeling. But he asked me to do that, and I was like, sure, I'll do this. And then I went the modeling route, and then I had sort of stalled out, and I was like, I want to do something in fashion. I had taught myself Photoshop for my skateboarding crew when I was like 12, 13. We were called the Fuji crew, and I would take photos of us and like make it all black and white and keep our hats color. And then I put like Fuji crew in the top right corner. And I just taught myself photo, and we would post them on MySpace, and like all our friends would be like, oh, that's so cool. You guys are like a skate crew, you know?
Yeah.
So I was like the graphic designer of our skate crew. So I knew I wanted to be in fashion. I stalled out in modeling. I had contacted that guy, Andy, who came into Nectar, and I was like, hey, I want to intern as a graphic designer for you. I knew I didn't have the ability to ask for a job. I knew I didn't have the know-how to get paid to do that, but I knew I could work my way around Photoshop, and I could teach myself anything. I learned from tutorials on the internet how to do Photoshop when I was like 13, right?
Right.
So I contacted him. He's like, hey, get in contact. I emailed him, and I had just sent him this long email of why I think I should get this internship for them. I ended up getting an internship being a graphic designer for them. And it turns out I hated doing graphic design for a different company. Like I thought it was going to be this thing where I got to creatively express myself and do all this cool stuff and make art, and like I don't know what I thought, but I got into it and I realized, oh, I don't like this at all. Like they're just telling me what to do and I got to do it, and I'm not getting paid for it.
I know that game.
Yeah, man. And it ended up getting to the point where I was making $200 a month, because I was like, hey, I can't keep like doing this for free. The company was sort of on the downslope, and they ended up paying me like $200 a month, and I was doing it like 2 or 3 days a week. And then I stopped, and then I had continued modeling a little bit from there. But the funny thing is, you know, these synchronicities in life. The guy who used to be the sales manager for I Am King, which was a company I was being a graphic designer for, had left and started his own sales agency called the Leverage Distribution. And when I stopped graphic designing, I was like, I know I want to do something else. I know I can learn anything, because I learned how to be a graphic designer for a clothing brand that was selling clothes to Zoomies and Tilly's. And like, okay, I know I can figure this out. I taught myself Illustrator while I was there also. They didn't give me any help with that. They're like, just figure it out, dude. This is what you got to do.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can learn almost anything, right? I could teach myself stuff as long as I'm learning from somebody who's had some success in this, which is what I did with the graphic designing. So I decided, I was talking to Andy and he's like, I think you'd be decent at sales. Because what I was doing when I was at the juice bar was selling people on like the benefits of juicing for your body. Like it was a new thing at the time. It was one of the first juice bars in Southern California. Like it wasn't big like it is. You couldn't go buy a green juice at the grocery store. It was like this weird thing. And he's like, I think you'd be good at sales. I was like, okay. He's like, contact Chris, who used to be our sales manager, started his own company. So I contacted Chris and I was like, hey man, I don't know anything about sales, but like I think I'll be all right at it. I'd be interested to come and try. And they let me go and intern there for I think like a month. And then they gave me a job as the West Coast sales rep for 3 like really shitty brands. And they were in this small little hole in the wall. They had a retail store, and in the back, 15 desks where all the employees would sit. And I was at the desk closest to Chris, who was the owner. So I couldn't fake working every day. Like he could see my computer screen. So like I had to be making phone calls. I had to be inputting it into our CRM, which was really an Excel spreadsheet. Like, I had to be doing something. And I remember when I got the job, I had ended up going to work at a pizza place before I got that job. I'm missing a couple steps here, but I remember getting that job and they were paying me $500 a month salary, which this is completely illegal because they required us to be in there 40 hours a week, but I wasn't mad at it. $500 a month salary plus like 5% commission on whatever I sold.
Right.
I think I made like $1,200 in 1 month, and I'm going to be able to quit the pizza job. I was delivering pizzas on the weekends, making like $1,700 a month. I was managing a sober living at the time, so like free rent. So it kind of worked out perfectly.
How good did that feel? That first $1,200 paycheck?
Oh, it took like 4 months, but by the time I got there, I was like, oh my goodness, I can actually sell things and make commission.
Right.
Like it shifted my whole perspective on life, right? I was like, this is crazy. People are actually going to pay me to make phone calls and sell them stuff that I never see. Okay, sure. And and so I did that, and then they bumped me up to a couple of better brands. And then we had launched this clothing brand called House of Junior, which was backed by this guy named Rob Garcia, who was the founder of a clothing company called Noir, which Kanye West used to wear their pants all the time. They were the leather jogger pants.
Okay.
Before leather jogger pants became cool. And I remember learning how to do sales. I downloaded Straight Line Persuasion. It was by Jordan Belfort, the guy who was on Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
I illegally downloaded Straight Line Persuasion so I could teach myself sales.
Wow.
It was like a 10 video course.
Dude, you're a mini Jordan right now with this story.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
I remember every single night I would watch one of the videos and I would take notes on it and I would practice it. And like when I would go into work, I was learning how to sell people and keep it on topic and be a point of authority and all of the things that I learned from that, right? And it was so helpful for me. And then we launched House of Junior. I was a West Coast sales rep for that. And I remember closing this store called American Rag off of a cold call. And American Rag in Southern California they had a location in LA on, I want to say Wilshire. It might not have been on Wilshire, but it was a really big store. And then they had one in Fashion Beach. And that was a spot where like buyers would go to and see what was being sold there. And then other stores would buy it for their bigger stores, right? It was like the trendy place. I remember I cold called them, put everything from Straight Line Persuasion into it, and I sold it and I nailed it. And Chris was like, you got House of Junior into American Rag? He's like, we haven't sold anything to American Rag ever in the time that I've been selling clothes. He's like, you nailed it. And that for me was like, oh my goodness. I think my commission on it was like $400 maybe, but I didn't care.
Real quick, I have to step away for like 5 minutes to take care of some family stuff, but I will be right back. Keep on going. This is fascinating.
Okay, cool. So I did that, and then they moved into a bigger office. They started their embellish, and they just sort of took off. They ended up starting like 4 of their own clothing companies, and they became very quickly like the largest streetwear um, distributor or sales agency in the nation. Every single store from left to right was selling. And I had sort of built a reputation there of being a self-starter and a self-learner. And they came to me and they're like, hey, look, we want to open up our international distribution channels, and we think you are a self-starter, and we think you're the perfect person to head up this position. I said,
Mm,
great, I'll do this. I'm willing to do anything. They're like, you're probably not going to be making great commission at first, but like you'll get there. At this time, I had been able to quit the pizza place and do this full time. I was only making like, I don't know, $1,500, $2,000 a month, but like I was making a living
yeah.
doing something that I love. And they're like, yeah, we want you to do this. I was like, I'll do this if I get to. They're like, call yourself whatever you want. I was like, I'm going to be director of sales because I know moving forward in this industry, that's going to be a great title to have. And I wanted to be a director of something, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I basically put together their entire infrastructure for their international sales distribution. I had set up with distributors in the UK and Canada, some in Europe, I think one in Africa, maybe, I don't remember. But I did pretty well at that. And then I had gotten to a point where I was like, I had sort of stalled. And I was like, this isn't interesting to me anymore. Like my whole life, it was either skateboarding or clothing. And once I got to see sort of the business side and the underbelly of clothing, I exotic, like fun thing to go and do. And I would be able to, like, I met some NBA players. I got to celebrities, giving them clothes. Like I got to go on a Puff Daddy video shoot once because
Hmm.
I was gifting them clothes from the, and then uh, Puff Daddy's manager, I think it was L.A. Reid, was there, and it might have been L.A.
Okay.
Reid or Steve Stout. I don't remember. They're at the video shoot, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to be in the music video?" It was the "Finna Get Loose" video with him and Pharrell. So I was like,
Huh.
I was on stage with Puff Daddy and Pharrell, like in a music video, just because I got to be in the fashion world,
You
I
were there.
guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so, like, I got to experience some cool things, but I had just topped out, and I was like, I've wanted to own my own company forever, since I was a kid. I always thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So I told him, "Hey, I went about it in probably the wrong way, and if Chris listens to this, I apologize, Chris. He knows what happened." But, I told him, "Hey, I'm going on a sabbatical. I'm gonna take 3 months off and just figure out what I'm doing. I'm sort of tapped out." Meanwhile, I had already started my LLC, filed the paperwork. I had an office set up. I left on a Thursday. Friday morning, I was working, and I did that for probably 4.5 years, and that was it was a really pivotal moment for me because it was so much growth, and I read so many books and listened to so many podcasts, and I was so like Mr. Motivated, get up early, go to the gym, go to
Yeah.
work till your eyes bleed, like, and it just never clicked for me. Like it never felt right. I had
Hmm.
had 2 3 employees at one point in time, and then they would leave because the business had slowed down, and it became a point of like I felt like I had failed, which is funny, right? Because coming from sort of the gutter of where I was to like,
Right.
I owned my own company, had my own office. I ran it for 4.5 or 5 years. I was making 50, 60 grand a year, getting all these tax breaks for owning a company. But like, I wasn't here. And my whole life, it was like, I'm going to own a company and just become a millionaire. And that's what's going to happen. And it
Yeah.
just didn't click for me. And that led me into a weird depression. I was in a toxic relationship towards the end of that business, and the business wasn't working out. And then, right before COVID hit, I was just sort of like, I was running the company by myself, working from home because I didn't want to pay for an office anymore. I I got really overweight. I weighed like 230 pounds or something like that, which
Hmm.
right now I sit at 185. I'm 6'1". Like 230 for me is really heavy. I've been fit my entire life.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
for sure.
yeah, I wasn't taking care of my body. I wasn't taking care of myself. And it just felt like a failure, man. Like my relationship was failing, my business was failing. It wasn't failing, but it was just stagnant.
Yeah.
No matter what I did, I couldn't get it to pop, right? And I took it as like a moral failure on my life and who I am.
Mhm.
And, I think if I would have just cut ties a bit earlier and moved on to something different, probably would have been a different experience. But it was that you got to do it until it works, no matter what sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Looking back, I think the timing of in which I got into the exact business I was in was being taken over by automated SaaS companies that like basically there was no need for me in my
Yeah.
company in the industry anymore. But I couldn't see that because I didn't have the wherewithal, right?
Mhm.
So I was doing that. I was depressed. I was in a weird spot. COVID hits. Everything stops. For the first time in like 6 years, I was able to take a break and not work and think, okay, what am I doing? And I would just, I like, there wasn't any work to be done. Nothing could happen. I got
Mhm.
some PPA money or whatever it was called. I think it was PPA or PPL or something like that, those loans that they gave out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got some government checks and like I was okay and I was gonna survive, but I knew I wanted something different. I had been in Costa Mesa my entire life.
Yeah.
I lived in Newport Beach at this time, you know, 5, 10 miles from where I grew up. Like I knew what I was getting where I was at, and my ex girlfriend at the time had moved away to Atlanta with our dog who we share, and I went out to visit, and she had told me, she's like, hey, if you want to move out on this fourplex, you can move into one of these units. You'll pay this much in rent. And I was like, oh, all right, I guess like let's see what happens, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I took the leap and I moved to Atlanta. And this was August of 2021,
Okay.
where I'm pretty sure this was like mid pandemic, we're sort of starting to come out of it, and everything felt like nothing was really going on.
Yeah.
And me moving out to Atlanta, I spent so much time alone. And
Mm.
at this point, I had started looking into ways to get healthy. I read a book by Dr. Amen. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Amen clinics, but he's basically a brain doctor, and he talks about a lot about supplementation and what to do to sort of holistically get yourself out of depression. And he
Yeah.
talks about exercising, taking supplements. So I started walking every day because I hadn't been exercising for years. So I started walking every day. I was like, if I could just walk every day, that's enough. And then I would start, doing push-ups outside, and then I would start doing pull-ups, and then I would start running, and then I started taking vitamin D, a multivitamin, and omega threes, and then like I started to lose a little weight, and I moved out to Atlanta, and then I had started intermittent fasting, and then like I had started to come out of this fog of like depression and weirdness, and there was novelty in my life now. I was out in
Yeah.
Atlanta, right? Like I was still running the fashion wholesale company just from a different state. Um, and, I started to feel like things were moving in the right direction. And then during this time, during the pandemic, I tried to start a print on demand company. And because I was making all these graphics just because I was bored, right? I was just
Yeah.
coming up with shit. Like I didn't know what it was, but I remember there was 2 nights where I was like, I'm gonna stay up all night until I figure this out. I put together a website. I came up with a name. I came up with like an automated customer service channel. I found a print on demand company. I put my prints up, and I remember running Facebook ads, and I was like, this is gonna be it. And I got like one sale for like $12. I was like, fuck. I was excited because I got that one sale, like proof of concept.
Yeah.
Uh, but it didn't work, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so I'm in Atlanta now. Print on demand company's long gone, and my friend Taylor Good, aka Warhodl in the NFT space, if you're familiar with
Now
him,
we're getting into a little Web3, baby.
yeah, he had told me, he's like, check this out, dude. I'm selling these NFTs. I just made like 10 grand this month. I was like, wait a second, dude. What do you mean you made $10,000? Like of real money? He's like, it's
Yeah.
in Ethereum, but you can convert it to cash. And I was like, I don't know about any of this stuff, man. Like I had started investing a little bit of money in Ethereum. I think I had like a $5,000 portfolio at that time. I was investing over the course of like a year or two. I didn't know much about it. I wasn't paying much attention to it, but he's like, look, man, just trust me. And I was like, do you think I could put these things up? And that's how I came up with the name Mnmlty, because my print on demand company was focused on minimal aesthetic prints. And Mnmlty was just the only domain that had minimalism with missing vowels in it, right? So it was mnmlty.com, mty.com. And he's like, you should sell these prints that you had for the print on demand company. Call yourself whatever you want. So I started selling one-of-one prints, and he told me how to put them up on create a listing. I think I sold a couple of them and made a couple $100 pretty quickly. And this was like when the height of NFTs were just starting to get there, right? And I was like, this is crazy. And then he put me on a Clubhouse. And I started listening into all of the NFT and all of the Web3 Clubhouse rooms, right? And that was when like Gabe Weiss, Sibet, Genergizer or whatever, all of these like OGs in the space. And I was learning so much about this NFT technology and blockchain and what you can do with NFTs and communities and groups. And I was going into every room and speaking as much as I could, and made sure that I had my OpenSea bio in my OpenSea link in my bio, so that when I went up to speak, people would go to my OpenSea and buy my NFTs. And I just like, I remember, because again, like pandemic, nothing was happening, business was slow. I was up to like 2, 3, 4 in the morning on Clubhouse, just listening to whatever I could about it, geeking out on NFTs.
You weren't getting up at 5 a.m. You were not part of the 5 a.m. club.
I am not. I will never be
He
part
was
of the
the
5
going to
club.
bed at 5 a.m. club.
Yeah, that's a real 5 a.m. club.
That's the club I'm on. Yeah.
It's a real 5 a.m. club, man. So yeah, that I was on DJing hours.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to sleep super late, but I was fascinated by this world, and you know, learning about this technology, and like I didn't have anything else to consume my mind and my time with. So like this took up any extra time that I had. I didn't know anybody in Atlanta. I knew like 2 people who I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time with, right? So I was just by myself in this new city. I was going outside and riding my bike, running and like exploring the city, but most of the time I was by myself. So like being able to build this community with people online was so fascinating to me, and I made some friends pretty quick, and Warhodl had ended up, I'm trying to get to the point where we got to ethereals, and it's sort of funny how the whole thing happened, right? I was selling my one-of-one NFTs, and then I think I had like started selling editions on a bonding curve. I don't know if you guys remember the bonding curves, where one of them was like 0.1, then the next 2 were 0.12, then the next 3 were 0.15.
Okay.
So you had to like gamify it and get them to get in early to get a good price, you know? And I was introduced to JR Artspace, who's the founder of Oni Force.
Yep.
I was introduced to him through Warhodl, and then we communicated through Clubhouse a little bit. I found out he made like 60 grand in 1 year selling NFTs, or like in 1 month or something crazy like that. And I was like, that blew my mind. I know I need to step my game up to get to this dude's level.
Right.
I ended up connecting with this other guy named who was a art curator for a gallery in Dubai, I believe, like a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Like real deal art gallery stuff. And JR Artspace had ended up doing an auction for one of his pieces. And whoever won that auction got to do a digital piece with him. And then they would sell it, and they would split the proceeds half and half. And anybody who could get in on that, JR was like hot stuff at the time, selling his one-of-one pieces. If you could get in on that, you're guaranteed to like put your name out there in the space, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this guy, Brandon, or Avant Glitch, ended up winning the auction. And because we had been friends, he said, "Hey, JR, I won't do this piece unless Johnny can do this piece with me." I don't know why he did that, but it was really cool of him. So I ended up becoming sort of the project manager of this project that we were doing. I was setting the meetings, I was making sure we were hitting our deadline. I was making sure we were setting up communication with the people who were winning things, who were buying the pieces. One of the utilities or hidden content that you could get was you'd get a one-on-one meeting with all three of us, and we'd advise you in your Web3 career, right? So like I just sort of became the project manager of the project. Now, where this leads into ethereals is we were all buying these PFPs at the time. This was like right around Bored Ape time. This was right around all projects come out. And we all got together in a group. I think it was Gabe Weiss, Warhodl, JR, myself. And we were like, hey, JR and Warhodl were like, hey, we're spending all this money on these other people, but like we don't even know if these people are involved in this space. Like we're quote unquote OGs. Like we've been doing this for months now. I think this was like 6 months at the time or 9 months or whatever. It all started sort of February 2021, right? And and they're like, why don't we just start our own project? And I was like, that's really interesting. So the project started as JR, Warhodl. I think Gabe Weiss was supposed to be our artist, myself, and then Gabe Weiss pulled out of being the artist. Or no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Gabe Weiss. It was, I forget what the guy's name was, but he was a dope 3D artist. And he pulled out, so we had to go and find somebody else. Found this artist, Jimmy Danko. And he's like, yeah, I think JR was friends with him. Yeah, I'll be the artist. So we started having meetings. Nobody really knew what their role was at the time, right? I had just decided that I'm going to sort of project manage because that's what I seem to be good at when it comes to these NFT projects. I'm going to make sure we set our meetings, make sure we hit our deadlines, keep a running list for everybody, just keep us on track. And then we were going to use the same developer that JR was using for Oniforce at the time. And Oniforce had yet to launch. So it didn't become sort of the phenomenon that it ended up being. Nobody really knew about it yet, but we knew JR was working on this project. That developer ended up, I don't want to put any bad names out. Something happened. And I was flying back from California for visiting my family. I was told, hey, our developer backed out. We need you to find a developer. Jimmy Danko sent me this bookmarked Twitter post that somebody put saying, hey, if you're a developer, comment down below. You can meet people. I ended up DMing like 4 or 5 people from that thread as I'm getting into an Uber at Hartsfield Jackson. I'm like, yeah, I'm on it. I'll figure it out, right? Just sending DMs. 2 people get back to me. One of them was Nathan Flickinger, who is the owner of Augmented Lab, founder of Kaiju Kings. This is before any of that happened, though.
Right.
He DM'd me back and he's like, yeah, look, I've been learning. I think I could do the development for you guys. I end up meeting with him. He was going by the name like Nate Coffee at the time or something like that. Like we didn't know his real name. He didn't show his face. We were like, is this guy gonna rug us? Like he's in charge of all the funds. Like we don't know what's happening. It was so weird, right? And mind you, none of us had met each other in person besides Warhodl and myself. Like it was all still, we were just all on the internet together. We didn't know who each other were. So it was just the trust system. So I DM'd Nate. He got back to me. He was on it. And he's like, yeah, I'll be your developer. I was like, all right, cool. We got a team together. We got the artist. We got the developer. JR is going to be our marketing guy. I was tasked with putting together the Discord, which I had never done before in my life.
Right.
I was barely learning Discord at that time, but I figured out how to put together a server, how to set up bots, how to set up security systems, how to like moderate, how to pick moderators for the Discord. And we got to work, man, and we started building out ethereals. Now, during that period, Oniforce had launched, and Oniforce took off like crazy.
Dude, I wish I would have just 8 months before, because I would have
Yeah.
known this stuff, right? But yeah, Oni Force, sorry to cut you off. I just needed to get that out. My
Yeah.
frustration came out.
Oni Force,
Yeah.
man, that was a hit. So Oni Force took off, and JR had to bow out of it. And him being the nice guy he was, he's like, "Look, I don't need my percentage. Oni Force has done well. I've gotten you guys to this point. Like, I have to back out. I'm giving my percentage to the rest of the people here." And it was really sweet of him. But he had backed out, and we felt like, oh crap, like our main marketing guy, so much attention on him right now. Is this gonna stall Ethereals? Are we gonna be able to get to where we need to get?
Mm-hmm.
I think we had launched Discord shortly after that, or maybe it was before that, but I think we got like 4,000 people in the Discord in a matter of like 24 hours. Something crazy like that.
Right.
Because JR posted about us in the OniForce Discord and on the OniForce Twitter, something about, hey, another project I'm involved with, Ethereals. We got to tag along with all that hype that was coming along with the project. And then Ethereals just sort of went bonkers from there, right? We did a week of pre-sale. All pre-sale slots sold out in a matter of like hours. And then we went to public launch, and we decided, everybody's doing 10,000. Like, why don't we get crazy with it and think outside of the box? Again, that free thinker mentality. Let's sell 12,345. Nobody's done that high of a supply yet. We sell out of our remaining like 9,000 supply after pre-sale in a matter of 18 minutes. And I remember sitting there going, oh my gosh, like all this work that we had been doing for 6 months on this project, like it just happened, and we sold out. We sold out in 18 minutes. Like that is
crazy.
I remember Jimmy wanted to sell out in under 20 minutes or in under 19 minutes, because there's another project that launched that sold out in 19 minutes, and we did it in 18. And he was like, dude, we did it. We beat, I don't remember what project it was, but like to have a quick sellout like that of your project at that point in time was a really big deal, right? And I know it seems now like every project sold out. And you look at projects that mint out now, and it's like some of them take days to mint out. The Porsche project didn't even mint out, like a year and a half ago, that would have gone in a second, right?
Right.
But, I don't know. At the time, it was a big deal for us, and I just, oh my gosh, I own a percentage of a company that just did $3.2 million in 18 minutes. Like, this is bonkers.
Right.
This makes no sense to me, man.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like going into the buildup of the project, there's so much hype, so much excitement from everybody on the team. And it was so much time spent in Discord and having like 3-4 meetings a day, meeting with possible partners, like so much work that went into the back end of it, making sure we're doing testing, making sure that the art's okay. And once we sold out, like it was really fun for a couple of weeks, right? Until everybody starts going, so when are you doing the next thing? When are you going to make the price of these go up? When are you going to do this?
Oh, yeah.
And it was a group of us who had all never launched before. I had some business background. A couple people had a little bit of business background. Georgiana or Rad Laser Falcon had a lot of business background. Warhuddle had a little business background. But like, we're all just sort of in this world of NFTs and fun and hype and selling out and trading NFTs. And like, we had like a rough estimate of what we wanted to do moving forward, but it didn't really pan out how we wanted to, right? OniForce got so big, JR had sort of backed out. And once we sold out, he's like, cool, my job's done. Nate, our developer, had then launched Kaiju Kings like a week after we launched Ethereals. And that turned into the, phenomenon that Kaiju Kings was and is to this day. So our developer was sort of focusing his energy on Kaiju Kings and everything there. And like, we're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, it's up to us to figure out what to do next. And that's when burnout really started to set in for all the founders who were still there, right? We're spending hours at a time on Discord. Like I got to the point where I didn't feel like I could go buy food at the store and come back. because I was missing Discord messages. I would be on my phone at the store, like replying to people, moderating, blocking people. I was, I wouldn't go to the gym because I was afraid I'd be gone for too long doing a set of bench press, that something was going to happen on Discord. And like, it just, the pressure of it all, this constancy of it. And it wasn't, 9 to 5. It was like you wake up till 2,
Yeah.
3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
That's all you're focusing on, right?
So
And
real
it,
quick. So real quick.
Yeah, I was to say, you
You,
gotta pause.
we went through 2.5 of starting.
We
3.
started 3. Yeah, we got a little
I
trailer.
already have some Ethereal's questions, but back up. Maddie, you heard more of 2 because I had
Yeah.
to step away. Questions before I get to the Ethereal's questions?
Yeah. So the main question I have about the professional part. So you were in the fashion modeling. So basically, you have to start from zero, right? You're blacklisted on bank accounts. Everything's cash. You're working for tips, but you're following leads as you get them. The guy says, "Hey, do you want to do modeling?" You get into that, and you kind of do all of these things. And what I want to bring to light is that you're developing skills. And even though you weren't monetizing then very well, I mean, you were talking about like, man, $200 here, you know, I mean, to think about $200 a month, it's like, whew, man, that's we gotta, up those numbers. Um, but you were developing skills, like you said, you learned these things, you got better at the graphic design, you were willing to work for free. Talk to us about like, do you look back at that and realize that that was really you sharpening the sword for what you needed to move into this Web3 space and be and honestly forward even from today, like these skills are going to be valuable?
absolutely. It's funny, as I'm sitting here talking about all this stuff, I realize how much I taught myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's been I've gone through my sobriety story so many times. I haven't gone through really my professional story
Yeah.
in detail like this. So
Mhm.
to sit here and talk about it out loud, it's like, oh my gosh, I really sort of figured out a lot of stuff, right? I
Hmm.
taught myself a lot of things, and I put myself in a lot of positions of vulnerability and not knowing what I was doing. And like I thrived in those positions. So
Sure.
absolutely, everything that I learned in those situations led me to be able to be well equipped to go into the situation with ethereals, to be able to like execute properly, right?
Yeah.
To be
Right.
able to have those understandings of, I don't know how to do this, but I know I can figure it.
And this is crucial because you hear these sayings when people say, sure, we've heard some version of this story, which is if you take a billionaire and you could snap your fingers and all of their money went away, right? They would still find a way to become wealthy again because they were a billionaire here, right?
Mhm.
And what people forget is, you don't fall off a log and now you have $1 billion in your bank account. Like there is an incredible process of learning, developing skills, habits, disciplines that go into who it takes to become a billionaire. And that doesn't get taken away just because you deplete a bank account, right? And I think that a lot of people maybe miss that because, especially, I don't want to say the younger generation, but I'll say this, I see this in the employment world out there. A lot of people think they're owed $80,000 a year to job to go learn a skill.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that unless somebody pays me full time. I want benefits. And it's like, here you are saying, I'll intern for you for $200 a month. You know what I mean? But what did you learn? And it forced you to figure it out. Same thing with the sales, right? When you got that big sale, and that's why you downloaded uh, um, Jordan
Straight,
Belfort's,
yeah.
videos because you didn't have a Google saying, here's our $80,000 package we're giving to you for free to teach you sales. You
Right.
had to like figure it out. Do you
Yeah.
think we're missing some of that now? Do you think that maybe that mentality
That's a good
is
question.
something that is setting people back? I mean, that like kind of lack to get in there and do it yourself. What do you think?
I don't know if I would say like, to say that society as a whole is missing that and be doing a great disservice.
Mm,
I think it's the people who already thought they were owed something. They're all just talking to each other now, and we can
mm,
see it from the sidelines.
Ooh.
I think there's a lot of people out there who are still really figuring things out. And you look at the amount of innovation that's happened in the last 5, 10 years, just in technology alone. There's obviously people out there who still have it in them, right? And there's
Yeah. Oh,
things
for sure.
being built left and right, especially in Web3. I get to see it firsthand. And there's a lot of people who don't expect handouts, but I think, I can't speak to like if that's something we're missing. I think it's something
Right.
that's not being pushed a lot on sort of the main social media channels to an extent. But I guess that also depends on what your algorithm consists of. Um,
Right.
Sure.
so it's so hard to say, but I think that hustle mentality still very much exists. And you look at it's an interesting topic, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere that I've gone to in the last few years, the service has been terrible. They're understaffed. And sure, we can say it's the pandemic and it's still the after effects of the pandemic, but
Right.
like, I don't know if I believe that.
Right.
I think what it
Have they
is a
gone to
lot of,
Chick-fil-A?
I don't know, but they are never understaffed. That's the
See what
good
I'm
point.
saying? That's what I'm saying. So it's
Yeah.
not the pandemic.
I agree with you. And my point is I think what has happened, a lot of people have shifted to earning money on the internet,
Yeah.
whether it's through NFTs, whether it's through being a micro influencer on Instagram or TikTok, or it's just transferring into different ways. I do think that mindset isn't spoke about enough on main social media channels, but I wouldn't say that that's something that we're missing.
I think it's a good. Have you heard of the book Sovereign Individual?
I have not, no.
Highly recommend reading it. It
Okay.
talks about we don't really know how much the information age is actually gonna totally shift this entire world. Everyone thinks it already happens, but it's just getting started. And one of the points is exactly that. With an internet connection and a very cheap device right now, a person on the internet can build wealth of a nation, like an entire nation, with just an internet connection and a computer, right?
Yeah.
And
you don't even have to do that. You can sit in a Starbucks with your iPhone.
Right. Literally
Yeah.
on your phone, you can create tens of millions of dollars. And so, to your point, the traditional establishments that do things slower or for a higher cost are going to be faced with the real reality that the people that are moving and shaking and building wealth through technology, they're just not going to have it anymore. And almost like this, there's going to be these resurgence of these like micro groups that are like, hey, we have influence, we're building wealth together. We might as well do it ourselves because X government or X company is not fulfilling what we need, and we can just do it better. And it's this. It made me think of that because of what you're saying, and it's like, yeah, I mean, there is going to be a massive shift in the way things are done in the next 2 decades, right?
I agree for sure. Let me ask you this. What do you guys think about this concept? So, Mike and I were in our 40s, and growing up as small children, if somebody was like a plumber or an electrician or worked HVAC, it was kind of like, oh, you weren't good at school. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you ended up being a plumber. That sucks, right? But fast forward, everybody got jobs with computers and now everybody's getting a college degree, and because it's really just you write a check for it and you'll end up with a degree from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so all of this stuff kind of goes that direction, and there's so much white collar work. What I think is funny now is some of the kids that we thought at the time were that kind of goof offs that went to the career and tech center and learned HVAC and whatnot. They were the ones when Mikey and I are leaving Penn State, and they're like, yeah, I'm working 60-hour weeks, but I made, 90 grand last year. And it's like, wait, what?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, I'm fixing freaking air conditioning units because nobody knows how to do it anymore.
Mhm.
Supply demand, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you really going to do if your toilet stops working and is leaking down through the floor? Like, what are you going to do? You can YouTube it. Sure, you can give it a go. But if you don't really understand how plumbing works, you're in a world of hurt. You got to call an expert.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do when they give you a bill? Well, I don't. You're stuck. What I think is interesting is to your point about the service industry. Do you see that becoming the next version of this like upper middle class blue collar wage, where servers used to make these like low amounts of money, but I could almost see those type of industries, because so few people will be good at interacting with people and understanding customer service, whatnot, that might be like a demand job that demands a premium. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
That's so interesting to think about. I just had a conversation with a family friend, and he got 2 air conditioning units fixed. And this is kind of, I don't know, it's interesting. He's like, the 2 people that they sent, they installed the wrong air conditioning unit, and they didn't know anything about air conditioning units. They had started 2 weeks ago. And he's
Yeah.
like, they were the only air conditioning company that had any availability to come and fix them right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so fascinating to think about, because nobody wants these jobs anymore.
Right.
But the cost to get something like that fixed now is so much higher, because the supply of those individuals is so much lower.
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable. There's almost a shift where they used to make a high wage and they were higher if they had a specialty. And then it sort of just became this thing that was normal. And now it's going back into this phase of like, you're making a good living doing this thing because it's a specialty and we cannot find people to fill these jobs. And it's like, there's a level of respect there now too.
Do you,
Because
Micro
do you think it's a
dirty jobs,
stigma?
bro. Micro
Do you think
dirty
it's like
jobs.
yeah, but do you think it's a stigma still? Is it my generation, like air conditioning, that's still causing this? Because they've now done studies. A person is more likely to take a job at Taco Bell because it says manager at $13 an hour than if you just open up the newspaper and look in the classifieds, right? And if you see, we will pay for your training, HVAC, brand new technician, $45 an hour to start. And people will take the Taco Bell job because it says manager, because it's like, no, I can't say I work on, an
Right.
HVAC.
Right.
And it's like, there's
I mean,
something weird about that, huh?
you think about the world of social media too, right? Everybody puts their world out on social media.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to post a photo of them in their HVAC.com shirt. Hey, I'm working on it, because the perception is that, oh, you have a blue collar job.
Yeah.
You're not wearing an iced out chain and a Rolex and driving a BMW.
Yeah.
You know, like it's the perception of it, right? But I do think eventually that will probably shift, because the pay will become so much, like, it's inevitable, right? The market will always tell you what the real value of something is, and like the value of those jobs are just inevitably going to go up. And
I met a buddy recently. He lays plumbing pipe or AC pipe or something for like massive Amazon warehouses and stuff, right? And like 5 days ago, he's like, bro, my cell phone died. I couldn't get it back. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to call my boss. And, those jobs, if like you don't show up to work, like you're pretty much fired, right? And so he's like, I'm going to get fired. I was like, dude, aren't you like stressing out? He's like, nah, man, I can find a job in like a day. He's like, there's just like such a premium on what he does. He kind of just like doesn't even look at his job as like, I need to keep this. He just shops around when he's ready to shop. It's crazy, man.
That's wild.
And he probably makes a pretty penny doing it too.
Oh, I guarantee he makes 6 figures easily.
What do we say, man? The 4 big categories: real estate, investments, media company, construction. And it's like,
how do you want to build
everybody
real
forgets
wealth?
about that. Dude, you remember how many people that own a construction company? Like, look at their house, look at the cars they drive. These people are rolling in cash, and they don't, they're eating steak. You know what I mean?
Our boy Josh Robinson from high school that rolled up in a brand new Honda S2000 when the first year they released. Guess what his dad owned? A plumbing company.
Yeah, same with Chris Sale. Yeah, no, I mean, it's wild. But anyway, it was a side topic, but when you say that, it is interesting as jobs move to the internet and its ease, everybody's like, well, man, if I can work at home, that sounds great, but who's going to do the stuff?
Right.
And I think that the wage for that and the cost for those repairs is just going to keep, we're going to keep paying it.
Absolutely.
So Maddie, any other questions about the professional career until we kind of move into Web3?
No, the skill set thing was a big thing for me. I think you've honed in on a lot of really important skills
Yeah.
that a lot of people don't realize are as important as they are. And honestly, your sales, I mean, cutting your teeth on sales like that, cold calls, stuff like that, that is a it's a special thing because anybody who's done it knows what that is like.
Yeah.
I know it keenly what that is like, and the go for no's, and you're just sitting there like, how many times do I have to do this? But once you get good at that, dude, there's literally no ceiling because if you can sell
Yep,
that, you can sell a yacht. You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
that's a big gear change.
Oh,
So
it's
I think it's
huge.
awesome. So let's move us into Web3. Sounds like you kind of had some realizations like Mikey and I did.
But wait, one thing, I actually do have a question to lead into
Sure.
the ethereals. Um, what we've been talking about is one of the things that you definitely learned of that professional side was just tackling anything. And you told yourself, you've said multiple times, I can teach myself anything. So that's obviously one thing that you've learned and become good at. Is there anything else looking back at there that says you're like, man, this is the defined skill set that I've learned that has helped me be successful today and through the Web3 journey?
Um, I would have to say, I guess what comes along with that is a level of confidence. And I
Mm,
think really that's probably more valuable than any other skill that I've learned. I think I've always been halfway decent at talking with people,
right.
and I think I'm very that's come easy to me, right?
Yep.
Learned that through all the other jobs I've done, having to sell myself to them
Yep.
and then having to actually sell things. I think that's one aspect of it is being able to sell myself and have confidence in that.
Yeah.
But the confidence of knowing that I think lets me go into any position and just be like, "Yeah, I'll figure it out,"
Yeah.
or sell
Yeah.
myself to that position. And I think
Dude.
after the launch of Ethereals too, like it was a perspective shift of like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this is you can build a company this way. It just everything in my mind shifted after Ethereals.
No. Yeah, I love that. And I will back you up that is honestly the thing that's probably benefited me the most in the beginning of the Web3 journey because, my big kind of quote unquote break was being an OG hate beast mod. And I got the mod gig because after I went through the ethereals thing, I kind of picked up and I started modding some other projects and I saw these projects blowing up and I was like, listen, if I can just if I can just DM the founder before he shuts his DMs down because they just didn't realize this shit show that was about to ensue,
Yeah.
I can maybe have a conversation. And I did that, man. I got in Hate Beast, like barely, almost got OG because it was so early. And I DM'd him and he like DM'd me back right away. And he was like, what's up? And I'm like, dude, I'm the mod for you. You should hire me. And then a sentence later, he's like, yeah, sounds cool, bro. And I was like, awesome. This is great. And then I tell people that story. And, we're talking to a lot of 19-year-old to 25-year-old people. And they're like, dude, I can't believe you did that. And I'm thinking to myself, like, dude, I'm 40 years old. I've had a long career. Like, I'm not really afraid to message somebody on the internet. It's not a big deal. But to them, they were like blown away that I did that. So just the self-confidence, absolutely. And just having that, you had this business career and background and having that perspective is so critical because now we are in the stage of like NFTs are startups, they are businesses, which leads me to my next question. The ethereal's time, that whole NFT time was interesting because people were just popping projects out, knew they were probably going to like, even you were a little early. Like it was a big deal that you minted out that fast. I would say, 3 or 4 months after ethereal's, like it was just guaranteed you could shit on an NFT and you were going to sell it.
Yeah.
My question is, I'm interested about the weight of like making $3 million basically overnight. And then that obligation of like, fucking, what do I do now? Because I owe these people something. Like, what did that experience feel like? And like, take us through that a little bit. Because looking, like, understanding what NFTs are now, like, I would look at a founder and be like, bro, you made $3 million and you're telling me you don't have a plan? Like, that's bullshit. But then back then, you were just in it and weren't thinking about that. I'm interested in that mindset and how it shifted over time.
I think there was massive, massive weight on all of our shoulders. And some people of the team stayed on and tried to deliver. You know, we had a roadmap and we were trying to execute on these things. And as time went by, like certain things of the roadmap seemed like they didn't matter, or you know, we had the company structured in such a way where it was like certain finances went here, certain finances went there, and certain finances were left over to actually run the company with. And you realize, like, okay, $3 million on primary sales, great. Like, for all of the big plans that we had for the company, let's say none of us took any of the money from it. Like,
Right.
to run a company for as long as we want, $3 million alone, all of the things that we wanted to do probably isn't doable, let alone the business model of relying on secondary sales, right?
Yes.
And part of that business model of relying on secondary sales involves you creating somewhat artificial hype around the brand so that you're getting to get more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the market took off and then the market stalled and then the market took a shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now there's less and less money coming. And it's like, we're looking at our money dwindling, not only because it's held in Ethereum and Ethereum's going down, but like the amount of secondary sales that is coming in is going down. And
Right.
like there was a couple people who are specialized in what they do. A developer is a very large part of it,
Right.
right? And being able to code in order to do certain things. And our developer was busy doing something else. And I don't blame him for it. The
Right.
amount of insanity, mind you, it wasn't a team of 2 people. It was a team of, I think, 8 individuals who all had their own ideas of what they wanted. And to get 8 people to launch a project like that, one is a feat in and of itself. Like,
Right.
after the fact, the cohesiveness of like, I think one thing a lot of people don't think about when it comes to NFT founders and projects, it's like there's human beings behind these projects, right?
That's why we're here, bro.
There's dynamics amongst these teams.
Yeah.
There's
Mhm.
sometimes
Yeah.
the dynamic is fantastic and you get a project like Bored Ape Yacht Club.
Yeah.
Sometimes the dynamic behind the project is terrible and you get an outcome like Oni Force,
Yeah.
right? Like, you saw the drama that came behind that. No disrespect to them, whatever. And then you get something like Ethereals where like it's kind of in between. And we were trying our hardest to execute on these things, but it just felt like, to a point, the demand of the consumers of what they wanted from us
Mm-hmm.
versus what we were able to give them, it did not add up. And the weight of that on our shoulders was just
Right.
brutal, man, because
Yeah.
we felt every day for like 2 or 3 weeks, it was cool. It was hype. The floor price was going up. We were getting sales. We had some big people come in. But after that, like, and people just started demanding more and more and more of you at all
Right.
times of the day. You don't feel like you can just walk away and take a break for one, because you have all these things you got to do, things that you promised, right? And then on top of that, you're just like, you feel like a failure because your floor price isn't going up. You feel like a failure because, and again, I think in the context of the NFT world, like, if this project were to launch today, I think the expectation of the everyday NFT consumer would be far different. And I don't think that pressure would be as heavy on all of us.
Right.
But I think, given the context of then all these projects promising all these things and these utility getting announced, and a lot of people hadn't done things, and there was so many new things happening, it was like these expectations were, I think we didn't know what to do with it. And
I think we might have lost your
We
mic there,
lost you,
or
bro.
might have lost your battery. It might have switched to something different.
Can you hear me?
Now
Yep,
you're
now we
back.
got you.
Something
Interesting.
happened. It
don't know
was
why.
like you went underwater and then you went silent.
Where'd I end at?
you
You were
don't know
basically
what to
saying,
do with it, or I think you
yeah,
said that?
the pressure just
The
mounts to a
pressure,
point
you
where
just
you don't know what to
at
do with
some
it.
point get pressured. You don't know
Yeah,
what to do
I
with
mean,
it.
I think that was just what ultimately happened. The pressure just got really, really heavy for all of us, man. And I think,
Yeah.
um, we delivered on a lot of our roadmap, but
Yeah.
it's heavy, man. It's a really big burden to take on, and I don't think any of us expected to walk into that.
Right. So the $1 million question,
Yeah, I was about to
knowing
say
what you know now, what would you do different? I'm assuming you would still make a project, and what have you learned that has helped, or things that you have applied to now your future Web3 career?
There's a couple different, answers to that. I think for me, something that I would like to do is continue to be an advisor to projects that have something meaningful behind them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's one of the reasons why I got involved with Cooks by Terry so heavily, was that Terry is an artist and he's been selling his art for between $3,000 and $50,000 for years now. And there's this market that is focused on art-based NFTs.
Yeah.
What comes along with that is a lack of expectation of roadmap, right?
Yeah.
Because the roadmap is essentially the artist's career. That's what attracted me to that project so much. One, because I've loved Terry's art for years and to work with him was a dream. But two, it was like, I'm not attached to this roadmap that these NFT consumers are going to expect us to hit so that they can flip their NFT and make some money.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
this is something that is concerned around the technology of NFTs, how we can deliver an experience to people who enjoy Terry's art,
Yep.
and being able to expand Terry's career as an artist and try some new, cool, fun things.
Which
So
is
that's one
a
aspect.
totally valid way for an NFT project, right? Like that is honestly fundamentally one of the things where it started with, was like, let's get these awesome artists a new way to get paid, which is cool.
Exactly.
So what was your second part?
And my second part, I think, is I'm very much, I mean, don't get me wrong, man. You launch a project, you make that much money, like that will always be in your blood. That's something that I'll want to do forever.
Right.
But I want to go about it in a very different way, where I want to do something that I can bridge something physical that I enjoy along with the NFT world. So for me, I've been talking to a couple people about looking into do something unique within the fashion world outside of creating some sort of digital wearable for a
Right.
fashion brand.
Right.
Like, I like what G Money has done with his clothing brand. I like what I don't know. There's not a lot of options out there to choose from, but
Yeah.
I'm really thinking deeply on how I can bring something teeth into for years and years at a time, right? That I'm willing to like sit down and focus my energy on, and like this will be my next 5-year, 10-year project.
Yeah.
Not something that has some roadmap and you got to execute on it and see if people like it. Like,
Right.
I want to launch a project that, I don't know, man, that speaks to me and that will have some longevity and that will make some noise in the space. And I'm not sure what that is yet, but
Yeah.
I'm racking my brain and I'm talking to some people, and I think there's some cool ideas to come up with that.
Well,
we'll probably do in the-
we're here to bounce ideas off of, because Maddie and I love doing that.
And
Go ahead.
let me ask you this, because you're trying to figure out what that is, and you said you're racking your brain on it. Where is the compass pointing, at least? You know what I mean? What do you think might be it?
I think it's hard to say, man. I think there's a place for an NFT marketplace that allows you to purchase physical goods via NFTs and burning.
Mm-hmm.
That and it's not for an already established Web2 fashion brand,
Mm-hmm.
for a brand that was created specifically out of NFT culture that the consumers have a part in helping to create from
Right.
start to finish, right? That's sort of where my mind's now.
Yep.
There's so many different nuances to that. I mean, I've thought about something as far as like creating some like a luxury goods marketplace where there's NFCs attached to it that are directly linked to those NFTs. Um, that and we make limited like runs of 5 pieces of like 10 different items every year,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very exclusive and it's highly priced, all the way to like your standard consumer clothing brand that um, just involves everybody in the experience of it, right? Because
Yeah.
NFTs can allow you to like, if you create a clothing brand, like sure you could figure out how to have a Discord and just do it the normal Web2 route, but I think with NFTs there's so much more nuance that can go into that, and so many different interesting things that you can do with the NFTs themselves, and then being able to allow them ownership of the project. And I don't know, that's sort of where my mind's leaning. But again, still very theoretical.
So you said something interesting though, which is helping the community to guide, because if you look at it like that, I think about this. I've been thinking about this lately. Like, what makes a project right now have above an ETH floor? Well, throw the Bored Apes out because they're just, the anomaly of the situation because they were one of the first ones to blow up. The ones currently, dude, it's just their community. They're
Yeah.
they're road warriors on Twitter. They're in their Discord, like Wolf Game, for instance, right? Wolf Game would
Oh, I'm a
not
big Wolf Game maxi, dude. Don't get me
Wolf
started.
Game would not exist if it wasn't for the community. The amount of tools that the Wolf Game community has made that they've just done because they wanted to is mind-blowing, right?
Well, let's clarify something here. During the first like 3 weeks, like the amount of money that people made from Wolf Game,
True.
I think is like I I pulled in an absurd. There was one point in time where I was making 3 Ethereum a day just from farming wool in Wolf Game. That was when Ethereum was at $4,000. This was for like I made like
There is that.
$120,000 in the first month of that game. Like there's a lot of those people in there, and that's why they're so. I think that's where that came from, and then they
Yeah.
built a community outside of it, right?
So
Like
that's a great
I
point.
always think there's some sense of financial interest when it comes to communities. As much as the NFT space wants to talk about community only, if there wasn't any money to be made here, nobody would be here. Let's just call it what it is, right?
100%.
We just made a video about that actually, but that is a
Yeah.
great point. We definitely have to put the caveat that the community exists because they made a fuck ton of money at
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
point, right? But that still doesn't mean that they don't have to keep on going, right? Like most
Absolutely.
communities that make a ton of money, even think about some projects that have been out there that have made a ton of money and they just don't exist anymore. There's something that is driving them still that is more than just the initial windfall that they made. I don't know what it is. I think about that often. And so I think your point about like how do you in an interesting way involve community, there's definitely something there, and I don't know, because you're to
Yeah.
your point, the communities probably that have figured it out now, they've made a fuck ton of money.
Well,
So how do you do
think-
it in a different way? I don't know.
I think there's something to novelty of it too, right?
Yeah.
Because what Wolf Game is building, there's so much novelty to the game mechanics and the way that that entire process was created. Nobody had done anything,
Yep.
right?
Right.
For Bored Ape, it was I couldn't even tell you what it was about Bored Ape, but there was some semblance of novelty there, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I think there's niche pieces of novelty within these other communities, or sometimes just the right influencers got on.
Yeah.
But I do think novelty is what can help drive a community and keep them nice and tight and intact also.
Correct. And especially, I mean, again, just doing something different to what you're to your point, can be massive. I mean, all of a sudden,
True.
a bunch of guys get on a Twitter space and talk like goblins for 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What? And it's like, look, you know what I mean? And it's wild. You're right. Just it's different. And what I think is interesting is that we started this whole conversation about the importance of free thinking. And what's fascinating to me is that the same percentages exist in this space as they do everywhere else, right? there's a lot of people that say they're entrepreneurs, but how many businesses fail versus how many succeed, right?
Yeah.
And people can come up with all kinds of reasons for it, but the bottom line is if you're a problem solver and you have good work ethic and discipline, typically you're going to succeed, right? And typically the people who didn't. It's the same in this space. And what I think is that, like, there's a lot of opportunities for people who just think differently or are willing to take a second and say, how do I think outside of the box with this? And we've had many of these people on our show, these people that have tweaked what blockchain Web3 can be and thought about it in a new way. And then it becomes a marketing effort. Can you get that out? Can people know that this is something new and novel? And where something like might have an advantage is somebody who's established. I mean, you talk about like Porsche. If they had combined novelty with that brand, it's over. Do you know what I'm saying?
Game over.
Because
Absolutely.
everybody already knows it. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, with me thinking for 30 seconds about this, if I was Porsche, I'd say, okay, we're going to release 500 NFTs, and the NFTs are going to be a silhouette of a car and a set of keys, and I'm going to set our royalties to 15%. But here's the deal: at the end of 3 years, everyone with this NFT gets that silhouette car. You go to a Porsche dealership, it's yours. Now let's think about what would happen, right?
Oh yeah.
First of all, they're not going to sell for, they're going to sell for a ridiculous amount because everybody knows it's worth a car, right? But imagine the secondary market as the 3 year market, 3 year mark gets
Goodness.
closer.
Oh my
Can you
goodness.
tell me that it would make enough to at least offset the cost? And what a great PR move. Do you know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
But my point is like, I don't know. That was me thinking for 30 seconds. My point though is that, like, that's different. And people would talk about that.
Right.
Imagine the news articles and like all of the new, oh my gosh, Porsche is giving away 500. Well, it's not really a giveaway. It's actually through an NFT. And now some writer on NBC whatever is writing about NFTs. All of this is exposure for the space. It's exposure for Porsche. Novelty is to what you're saying, is like that's the kind of stuff where I'm waiting for those type of things to happen with the brands that can really push it. And I think that's what we need in this space. And we've talked about it. We think it's probably going to be video games, but who knows? Maybe it'll be a car
But
company.
it's so interesting to me too. Like one of the things that I love about being with Terry on this, and we have our partner Street Lab. Shout out to Street Lab who helped us launch this whole thing. Because it's an art-based project, we're really focusing on the technology and the experience within the consumers, right? We have this idea where we just dropped his Mint Pass, and we're releasing a new piece airdropped to these Mint Pass holders every month for the year of 2023. Now, where the cool part comes in is we're ideating and talking about what can we do with these 12 pieces at the end of the year.
Right.
I would love to talk about this with you guys, but for
okay.
people that are going to hear it, like
It's okay.
I don't
No,
want to
you're
give
good.
away too much. But it's like
Don't give away too much. Please don't.
fascinating aspect of it are the things that you can do with this technology and the
Mhm.
experiences that you can create for people. And I don't think a lot of people are thinking about it in that way. I think there's so much short-term thinking in terms of like, how can I get in flip NFTs? How can I get in and make a quick bag?
Yeah.
Which is cool.
Absolutely.
There's nothing wrong with that. I am very much a degenerate in that way. I love that aspect of it. It's initially why I got into it. But if you think like what you said, I don't know why Porsche didn't do something crazy. Such a missed opportunity, right? I
Big
don't know
time.
why every big company in the world isn't coming in, thinking outside of the box and going, what can we do? Because it's such a new space. The world is literally our oyster with this. We can come up with so many different things. You get 3 good Solidity developers together, created projects, and you start saying, now think about what's the craziest shit you could do with NFT project.
Yeah.
The limits are endless, and that is what's so fascinating about this space.
Somebody will do it.
Yeah.
Somebody will break that mold, and
I
then
love
it's going to
that.
be all she wrote.
Absolutely.
So I think kind of like I'm interested in what does your, or from all the lessons that you learned, what are kind of some of the things that you, as in this advisor role, you're connected to a lot of the OG NFT community. You've launched your own project. You're now strategic advising. I'd love to hear just kind of 2-3 bullet points of like things that you firmly believe in Web3 projects should be doing now and going forward, and kind of what do you talk to about these projects?
I think it's an interesting question because every project that I've been a part of takes such a different approach, right? I think there's the standard practices, and I think no matter where we go with NFT projects in the future, there will always be these standard practices of being a part of Web3 culture, right? There's this guy, Warren himself, on Twitter, who posted this thread to Porsche about saying, hey, Porsche, it's not too late, but you can still do these things. And he outlined, he's like, be a part of the culture. Get a CryptoPunk as your PFP for ETH Porsche. You know, buy a sewer pass and have some of your best stream Dookie Dash while having an AMA and they're roasting you. Like, just being a part of this culture, I think, is so imperative to any project that wants to come in or start a project. And that involves Twitter spaces, that involves being a part of the community, that involves showing that you have skin in the game by owning certain, understand the culture of it. So I think moving forward, those things have to be executed on and executed on well. And I think such a big part of this space is the community aspect of it as a whole, outside of just sort of these individual Discord communities or Twitter communities that we're a part of. So I think that will always be a very strong, firm basis that projects will need to execute on moving forward. I also think, again, novelty is something that any project that is going to launch should really spend time and effort, get a group of minds together and think about what can you do differently that hasn't been done yet, that can utilize this technology to a point of its fullest potential, right? Like, think outside of the box. What can you do differently with it? Whether it's with art or whether it's just with technology, or I don't know, but try to think outside of the box.
I don't
And
know,
then
man. I think we need to talk, because like, would someone buy this podcast right here, right now?
if the revenue model makes sense, why not?
Right?
Absolutely.
I don't know.
100%.
Who the
I
hell
think we should
knows?
sell it. Let's sell it. Let's mint it as an NFT.
In my
Right,
mind,
right.
you're one of the top sellers, 100%.
Thanks, man. And then 3, I mean, it's a really good question. I don't know what my third bullet. I guess just novelty, and then focusing on like executing on the aspects of Web3 culture very well, and be well thought out, and make sure you come into the space with good intentions, man, because a lot of people come into the space and take a lot of people's money, and it sucks to see, and it's happened to me before. Scammers,
Yeah.
people who are just creating rug projects, but come into the space with good intentions. And I guess a third aspect of it would be outside of novelty, would be take the time to educate yourself and understand the technology and what it's,
Right.
because I really think that we'll be seeing NFTs disguised as something that isn't an NFT in the near future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think especially within video games, like you were talking about,
Yeah.
I think we'll probably see insurance policies sold as NFTs at some point in time. We'll probably see homes sold as NFTs at
Any
one point in time.
document. Yeah.
Yeah, if the government allows us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ultimately, maybe
Yeah.
it'll be NFTs through CBDCs. I don't know what that looks like, but
Yeah.
Why not?
you know,
Yeah. No, I mean,
understand the technology.
for sure. Certainly, like things like licensing would be
Absolutely.
greatly augmented with that, because it makes it transparent and easy to follow. So who knows? There's definitely some bureaucratic thoughts that Web3 makes sense for.
Yeah. So
Absolutely. 100%.
you say one thing that I just wanted to touch on that's interesting. Most of the responses when we talk about that, like success in Web3 strategy, it is, hey, they're businesses now. It's a form of a Kickstarter. But you really doubled down on Web3 culture. I love that as an answer, because not many people say that. What I'm curious is, what is Web3 culture to you?
Let me show you something. You see that? That's a
Yeah.
GM. That is Web3 culture to me, man. GM.
Tattoo GM on yourself.
I know that's
love that. That is a YouTube short. I mean, that's a YouTube reel right there. That shit's definitely going online.
I tattooed GM on my hand after Ethereal's launch to sort of benchmark this period of time in my life and to remember sort of like I got into this space in February of 2021, right? And I felt like it was so small, and I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an OG, but like came into this, I was at it at a very small infantile part of the process. And
Right.
I think Web3 culture is just like community, man, and shit posting and memes while also building real connections with people. Like it's sort of video game culture distilled down into like groups of people who are excited about, this new technology that could possibly change the world.
Yeah.
And we don't ever take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah.
It's all sort of like bullshitting while also teaching people how to not get scammed and like
Yeah.
and tweeting GM and like making friends. And it's just like, it's good old fashioned clean fun, I guess. I don't know how else I distill it down into like one
I love it, man.
sentence.
I don't think you have to distill it down. I mean, I think that the question was to hear your thoughts. I mean, I love that
Yeah.
answer. There's obviously no right or wrong answer there.
Can you see maybe it's not irony, but just the coincidence here? Of course, we don't necessarily believe in that, but punk rock, skateboard, degen,
Absolutely.
Web3 seems to be a theme
Absolutely.
here. Seems to be a
100%.
theme
It's
here.
all coming
you
full
know?
circle, brother.
It all makes so much sense.
Yeah,
man.
it really does.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Well,
Just a bunch of ragtag group of kids who decided to get together on the internet and hang
Yeah.
out and
hell yeah,
make some
man.
money together.
And we take care of each other. And we try to, but there's some bad eggs like anything else. So yeah, it's good.
That's great.
Exactly.
I want to be cognizant of time. We have been talking for almost 3 hours at this point, and I could go for another 3. I want to give Maddie, do you have anything to add before I kind of like move on?
No, I think we got to move on too,
Yeah.
because we do need to be cognizant of time.
Yeah.
Because it's tomorrow for me.
So
I think it is for you too, right? Minimum.
almost
Yeah.
2 minutes.
So I really want to miss. We have two. We lied. We have 2 questions at the end. They're softball questions. But before that, give us Mnmlty's next 3 to 6 months in Web3. What are you doing? What are you excited about? What does that look like for you?
My next 3 to 6 months are going to be focused on, in the immediate sort of straighten my sights, are focusing on Terry Urban's digital career, and focusing on doing one-of-one pieces and auctions for him and sort of expanding his consumer base, because he's built such a great following within the Web2 sort of IRL world.
Mm-hmm.
And with the success of Kooks and the team that we have behind us, I think the sky's really the limit. So really exploring everything NFT technology has to offer the art world, and just really expanding in every way we can with that. On top of that, ideating on how to bring novelty to the fashion and NFT space and combine those 2 things.
Yeah.
And then I've also been considering possibly doing a Twitter Spaces show. I'm still sort of jumbling that idea around in my head.
I love
if
it.
that happens or doesn't, but we got to be on the Nifty show for Kooks, and that was really cool to sit and talk with them. And every time I talk, Terry's like, dude, you should have your own show, man. I'm telling you. So maybe he'll push me into it enough one day. Start my first show. I don't know.
We're told that we should be doing the same, and I think we're gonna have to bite the bullet and do it as well.
I think you guys should, man. Absolutely. A midday show.
Yeah.
Great.
I think that's what we're thinking about doing. And then it'll also, because we've gotten the long form down pretty well, like forcing us to keep something to an hour. That'll be interesting. And
you could do it. I'll tell you what, man. Ad space on those shows is not cheap. It is not cheap at all. It is in the thousands of dollars to get your project promoted if they have enough viewership.
Oh,
so
100%. And we're looking to monetize. So With that, I definitely know that's one of you got Matt's attention. Did you see his eyes perk up there a little bit? But no, man, I mean that's cool. I think I'm definitely want to check out the Kooks project. I'm sure people that have listened to this amazing conversation will as well. And I just love your passion. Your story was unbelievable. But before we get to closings, we've got two questions. And those are, first question is, do you have any questions for us? Because we just peppered you with questions for 3 hours. And we always like to lend the courtesy to our guest. Fire away. If you don't have any questions, totally cool.
I'm curious both of your guys' definition.
You cut out on
I
us
heard,
again.
yeah, the audio cut
I
out.
think
I
your
heard our
cord
definition
might be
of
a
what?
little loose.
I'm curious both of your guys' definition
Having
of.
again.
Hold on.
We
hold
got
on.
definition of, and then it blanked out.
I'm curious both of your guys' definition of Web3 culture.
Web3 culture.
Okay.
That's good. I think we have never been asked this question.
We have not.
And again, I just asked you. I'll go first. I think Web3 culture is, I'm not going to take a little bit of pessimistic view because what I've seen, I think Web3 culture is a bit toxic. I think it's a bit superficial. Hence why we created this show, because I think there's a gap in the industry for real human connection. Not saying that doesn't happen, but I think I've seen the community building really happen more on the Discord side. But to be positive, I've built some amazing relationships already. We've created an amazing community. I think why I brought up the negative aspects is because I think it easily can suck you up in a bad way. But if I were to talk about the positives, it is community. It is helping each other out. But I don't know. I'm just I'm immediately reacting, and then my immediate reaction is more kind of superficial than what, because people talk about community and building relationships all the time, but is that really happening? I don't know.
I respect it.
That's my initial thought.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't, there are aspects of that I agree with, but I think ultimately what it comes down to is, when Mike was first telling me about NFTs, he said, Matt, it's a digital gold rush. And that's always been what it's been to me because it's so true, right? The bottom
Yep.
line is it's an insane opportunity. And especially when it was booming, the money was flowing everywhere. I mean, like you said, Wolfgang, $100,000 in a couple months of playing a game. That's wild, right? That's just
Yeah.
crazy talk. And whenever you have something like that, it brings out the best in us and it brings out the worst in us. Just like money, right? I think there is people that got in the space for great reasons. Just like I think people decide to be a lawyer for good reasons, right? And then you get into the system for 10 years and maybe you don't always end up as noble as you thought you started, right?
Yeah.
I think that, it can be hard if you've been sitting there with a pickaxe for 5 years and you've got nothing, and then you start seeing opportunities that maybe aren't the most morally sound. Gets real easy to, and when you're hungry, to get tempted. And these are all these things I see playing out in any space where money can be found quickly, right? I think that this is a new space. What I think is different about it is this space has been able to attract the youngest generation of people that a lot of these booms occur, right? When the dot-com thing hit, unless you were freaking Zuckerberg and were coding at 13, you know what I mean? It was an older generation getting swept up into that. The Wall Street crazes and things like that. What's wild to me is that there are people in middle school and high school that got swept up in this NFT gold rush. And what I'm very interested to see how that how that kind of pans out, right? There's a lot of unanswered questions, because it's a temptation like anything else. I mean, we had a whole conversation about what addiction can be, right? And what is it like? What happens once you've made $100,000 in a month playing Wolf Game, and now you have to go to a job that's $12.88 an hour? You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
that's going to be hard to compete with, and that's going to shape people's mindsets. And again, that can bring out the best or the worst in us. So Web3 culture, I think, is that. And I think what we're seeing is that with a younger generation with more technology that wants things even faster than our predecessors wanted it. And I'm curious to see whether that becomes a problem or whether it becomes the next great innovation.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Fascinating way to look at it.
That was a way more articulate answer than mine. I mean, the last thing I could think that comes on top of mind is just hype, right? Just the concept of hype. I never experienced that before Web3.
It's crazy.
Like just
Neither
this just like you can feel the energy coming off your computer screen. It was just a really bizarre experience, right?
It is crazy.
And you're literally just looking at a computer screen talking.
It's
Like
addictive.
typing, yeah.
Oh,
there's adrenaline with the hype and everything that associated with it as well.
I will never forget you on your laptop, Mikey. You were here visiting, and you said, "Dude, you have to see this." And he just logged into the Hate Beast Discord, and here he is as a mod, and the main chat, you could not even see it. It was scrolling so fast, and I was thinking, what happened? I mean, it was insane. Dude, you had how many channels were in there? I mean, the tiny little sub channels. I'm talking weird stuff. Like they had to split up the anime channel because they had to split it up between like manga and anime. I mean, it was like wild.
It was out of control.
And they had to split it because it was too busy.
Yeah.
What? I mean, it was. I've never seen anything like that. That I'll never forget. That was crazy.
One of my favorite was when I was home too. I showed Dave. It's just like being a mod. Like if I just typed "hi" in the general chat.
Oh my goodness!
It ramped it up by like a factor of 100. It was unbelievable. One of the craziest moments was my buddy Christian, who was also a mod. We would do Twitch trivia on our Twitch channel to give away Hate List, and that was just wild, man. That was just wild.
You know what's scary to me about that is that high will be something that I will chase forever.
That is a scary.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
How do you go back to that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my real answer, bro. Hype. That's how I describe it in one word.
Hey, you were a mod at Hate Beast with Microglia, right?
Yeah.
Micro?
I met Micro in real life for a couple beers because he lived in San Francisco.
Yeah, he's the homie, man. We hung out and become somewhat friends with him outside of NFTs a little bit.
He's a good dude, man. Dude. Yeah, I met him, but he's super smart and trying to be a doctor. He's trying to do things with his life.
Yeah, like neuroscience or something like that.
Yeah, he's insanely smart.
Yeah.
One of those, unimportant things.
Just
kidding.
Yeah, we
if
met.
It's not NFTs, we don't care.
We met in Dublin, where I lived, in East Bay, and went to craft beer bar and hung out for hours and had a blast.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great dude. Shout out to Micro.
He was on our show.
Really?
Yeah. He came on our show and we had a good conversation. Yeah, he's a good dude. Well, thank you for the question. That made me think that made me think deeply. And then lastly, last question. You've obviously hosted Twitter Spaces, been on Twitter Spaces, you've been in Clubhouse, you've been around what you call the Web3 culture as an OG. Compared to all of those kind of talk show experiences, would love feedback on how you thought tonight went and how your experience was on our show.
I thought tonight was fantastic. I've listened to so many podcasts for so many years. I've always wanted to be on a long form podcast like this or a show to be able to just talk with people and have conversations like this. This is something for me that really fills my soul. I enjoy having deep conversations like this. and no, talking about myself for 3 hours does not fill my soul, but, like,
Yeah,
some of the topics that we're able to get into was really good and enjoyable, and
yeah,
I think it was great, man. I love what you guys are doing, and I think the Web3 space really needs more of this, and I think, um, yeah, I don't really have any notes. I think it was very well done and well executed, so thank
Thanks,
you guys
man.
for having me and taking the 3 hours out of your time to do it.
Hell yeah, brother.
yeah. It's our pleasure, man. It's
We
what we
love
love to
what we
do.
do, and you're one of your fantastic guests. And I'll let Maddie say his closing comments. I'll say my closing comments, and we'll call it a night, bro.
Beautiful. One last thing, I guess, if I did have to point one thing out, there was times where I felt like I talked for a really long time.
Yeah.
Jump into those and go back and forth because I'm sure there's some questions that could have popped up out of those too. I don't know.
For
Maybe it's just
sure.
me feeling guilty that I talked for so long. I'm not sure, but you know,
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
think I finally did do it, but we it was when you started going to Web3. We should have cut you off a
yeah,
little bit before that. But other than that, I think you did good. I mean, I think the one thing that we really are cognizant of and try to concentrate on is this really is your stage, right? Um, we try to foster the conversation, but we love to hear your story. But that is good feedback.
you guys did a
yeah.
fantastic job of fostering the conversation, 100%.
Thanks,
Thanks,
man.
man. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Well, man, this has been an amazing conversation. We get to do this and get to meet people, but what I really like about this story is that, sometimes people come on here and it seems like what they're waiting to do is talk about their project in Web3, and they always end up enjoying the Star Wars episode 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
But it's like they kind of came in here for a marketing effort or whatever it might be. What was really cool about this conversation is we said Star Wars episode 1, and dude, you let it riff. It was great. And that's what we want. We want people to hear these stories. And we talked about it before. Ultimately, at the end of the day, is that people need to see that it's real people in this space, just like you said. Um, and we have these varying different backgrounds. And I think that, as you said, the best stories, man, are when the protagonist encounters some level of struggle, right? This unsolvable problem that seems insurmountable, and it creates this drama and the suspense and this thrill. Like, are they going to get through it? Are they not going to get through it? And for you to internalize that and realize that you are the solution to getting through that, and for us to be able to hear that, I think that's going to be something that people are going to really benefit from. Mike and I say we clip this stuff together. These will be resources for people. We want people to be able to hear these stories and say, okay, you know what? I've been in that situation, or maybe I'm in that situation. I don't think I can get out. And now it's just, people need to hear that. You're aware of all of these things probably more than I am. It's just good to get it out there. It's good to be able to have some exposure, and I think it just makes people seem very real in this space. And I'm really, we don't get a chance to have those type of conversations all the time. So I'm really happy when we get to, because Mike and I know I'm speaking for Mike here, this is the stuff that we're really passionate about, right?
Hmm.
Is ultimately helping people improve the quality of their lives and live their best life, right? I mean, that's really what it's about. If we reach down and help people and pull people up, we all win. We don't have to be crabs in a bucket. And I just that's why our core values are what they are. And so this I think that this conversation demonstrated what we're trying to do at Midlife Crisis long term better than most. And so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and thank you for letting me be a part of it, man.
Yeah.
You bet.
I
Well,
really
you're going to
think
continue, man. This is just the beginning.
awesome. I
I,
think, Mikey, you did a really good job of explaining what the overall thesis was of the podcast prior to us coming on. So I think that you made me feel very comfortable in terms of like, hey, just let it rip, man. Go all
I
Yeah.
out.
love it.
So
I'm
I
glad that
appreciate
you
it.
felt that way. And I'll just say a couple comments on top of what Matt said. I think kind of in a selfish way, tonight made me just even more excited for Midlife's future because we started this. Web3 was a way for us to monetize and get exposure, but ultimately we want to be a Joe Rogan-esque type podcast where we just talk to interesting people. And tonight really hit home with just You're super interesting, dude. You have an amazing story. You're really good. You're really well spoken. You did an awesome job telling your story. And I learned a ton tonight too. And I think that just like selfishly, it was fascinating for me. And I feel like a better person after having that conversation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Two, you're like a brother from another mother, because like I'm literally getting chills as you're describing like your evolution and crying and having these like come to Jesus moments. So being vulnerable and being able to tell that it's not easy. And fortunately, we've had a lot of guests on our show that have done that, but tonight was like, I'll never forget tonight. So thank you for being vulnerable, because I know that's how hard it is. And then three, I say this a lot, but I really mean this. I look at this as we just built a 3-hour friendship online for the first time, which is also a magical Web3 culture-esque thing. And I want to win together, man. Maddie and I want to win together. Ultimately, what drives us is learning from people, meeting new interesting people. And the day that we can make enough money to have someone from our community get a free 2-week, 3-week vacation in one of our rental homes, like that's what drives me. None of the other shit, right? Not the money, not the how many NFTs can I get in my wallet. It's the day that Maddie and I can like write the Discord message or get the phone call to like one of our OG community members and like really impact their life. So you are a step in that journey, and thank you for being part of it.
Thank you guys so much for having me. And I appreciate the kind words. You guys are angels of human beings, and I'm super happy we got to do this.
Hell yeah, man.
Awesome, man.
You know, it's funny when somebody says we want to have a deep conversation. It's like, well, what kind of deep are you talking about, man? You know? And we figured out what kind of deep we were talking about. I appreciate you guys being willing to go there.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's rare to find people who are willing to go there, you know?
Absolutely, man. Cool. And like Maddie said, really to end it, it's just the beginning, brother. So we're gonna have many more conversations, and I can't wait to grow with you.
I look forward to it, guys.
But that being said, peeps, we still have 9 people watching us after 3 hours plus.
That's crazy.
Which is amazing. That's what I'm saying, man. Our OG community is wild, man. They will watch us for multiple hours.
Just imagine if 9 people were sitting right in front of you right now. That would be really weird. It's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people to tune in for 3+ hours.
Yeah.
But for all of you, thank you. You drive Maddie and I, and now you drive our new friend as well. We're going to be back next week. I don't have the list of guests right now, but I know there's going to be some people on the show. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have a great freaking weekend. Oh, yes, Sunday. We're going to have our first hangout in a while. We're giving away free NFTs playing marbles on Twitch. We all know you love your marbles on Twitch. We're going to do that and then hang out in the Discord a little bit, maybe play a little video games. It's going to be a blast. That was an amazing night. We freaking love you all. Midlife